Hey guys, it's the WalterFootball.com After Dark Show for February 12th, 2025. We're going to be recapping the Eagles' slaughter over the Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. Going to talk about everything with the game, the bets we made, and stuff like that. Going to get into some futures bets and talk about some other ways to make money via sports betting this offseason. So before we get into all that, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. Of course, I'm wearing one of the shirts, hashtag Ken Griffin lied. I can't get sued for that because there are a million or so Ken Griffins out there, and I didn't specify which one. And so I just need one of them to be a liar, and I'm in the clear. But you can get that shirt as well as many others here in the merch store. Still 15% off. I'm going to be adding some new shirts. I think I'm going to be designing them either tonight or tomorrow. And so I guess by the weekend we're going to see some new shirts on here. I think I have some good ideas that somebody talked about on Saturday with the golf guys. So look out for that. You can also go to Amazon, buy my books. The most recent one is Jerks of the College Years, where I made fun of people I saw in college. I spent 6 years at Penn State, so as you can imagine, I had a lot of writing material. Also, how the 2020 MVP was stolen. That's an expose I uncovered where Brett Favre tried to sabotage Aaron Rodgers 4 years ago. It's quite the read. I'd recommend it. If you haven't read the story, it's definitely something that you're going to find interesting. Also, consider super chats, super stickers. That's the best way to support the show. It's Q1, which means we don't make any money on YouTube ads. YouTube ads pay nothing, even less than nothing than they usually do. So that's how we keep the show going. So we've had John Sanders, Slew, Alan Stafford, Cam Meek and Eagle. You guys have been so awesome with your contributions. So just really appreciate that. And just any further contributions would be so awesome. So thank you guys for all your help. And, thank you for watching the show all the time. So, all right, we are joined by Evan Daniel. Evan, how's it going? How is your Super Bowl? How are your bets?
The Super Bowl was one of the worst games I've ever watched.
Right?
It's one thing you get the game wrong, but that was a pretty boring game from a football perspective. What did you think?
Well, it was, as someone who bet the Eagles to win the Super Bowl back in April, I had a lot of fun with it. Although it was, so, I was trying to do what you do is, look at the sports books while the game is on and try to find good lines. But I found that to be pretty difficult. Like my son, who's 3, is like running and like jumping on me and like he's like, "Daddy, put on Paw Patrol." I'm like, "No, we're watching the Super Bowl." And then my daughter is a year and a half, comes running in. She wants to be picked up. And as soon as I pick her up, she wants to get down. So I didn't get to do all that much. I did live bet some stuff. Some I won, some I barely lost, which is frustrating. But yeah, I still had a good time. I watched with my dad. He was very frustrated at the beginning because the Chiefs got that call on the AJ Brown offensive pass interference. We're like, oh man, the game's gonna be rigged. But the talent disparity was too big to rig. So I had a fun time watching the game, even though it was a massacre. So what about you?
Yeah, so we'll get into the bets a little bit later. And I told you before the show, and as bad as the game was, and despite getting the pick wrong because I thought the Chiefs were going to win in a close game, this was my second best Super Bowl, only trailing the Bucks massacre of the Chiefs a couple of years ago, which I also got the game wrong. But with props and live betting and things of that nature, there is no excuse to lose money in a game like this. This was one of the easiest in game betting opportunities you'll ever find. We talked about props on the show last week and the week before. We gave out a whole bunch of winners if people really listened and paid attention. Not only winners pregame, but strategies on how to attack it mid game. But before we talk about bets, we probably should talk about the actual game and not the refs who didn't have a chance to get in the way despite the early OPI. And then, by the way, there was a makeup call on the second drive with a roughing call on McDuffie, which was a joke of a call. I mean, I thought the refs started out pretty bad, but thankfully the refs had absolutely nothing to this game. This was an ass kicking like we've really never seen or haven't seen in many years in the Super Bowl. Even the Bucks Chiefs game wasn't as big of a massacre. I mean, the Eagles dominated this game every way you could possibly dominate. From special teams, they were almost flawless on special teams. Their offense was excellent. I mean, it's not just about Barkley, who obviously the game plan was taken away. Hurts was awesome in the game. The coaching, they outcoached Andy Reid and co. I mean, they put on a clinic. Vic Fangio put on a clinic in this game. So they were really well above excellent, if you can get there, in every facet of this game. They took a really, really good team, arguably one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and made them look like the worst team in the league. So credit to the Eagles. The Eagles dominated this game. They deserved it in every single way. So I'm looking forward to breaking a couple of things down, because the best thing about this game, and we talked about this throughout the year, is handicapping games to me is really just as fun as watching the games, understanding what's going on, predicting what the matchups and predicting what angles matter. And the one thing that we talked about last week more than anything else was pressure. And that was the name of this game. It was pressure. It was all about pressure. There was nothing in this game that didn't revolve around pressuring of the quarterback, especially when it comes to the Eagles on Mahomes. So I'm looking forward to breaking down some of those angles, talking about the game first, and then diving into some of the fun prop bets that we gave out and had, and kind of lessons going forwards.
I thought that you're right. We talked about pressure a lot. I thought that's the thing we focused on the most a week ago, and we saw it right away. The Eagles were just swarming Patrick Mahomes left and right. He had no chance in the pocket. I thought at least unlike the offensive line for 4 years ago, like there were some strengths. Like the offensive line for 4 years ago, they had so many injuries that they couldn't block at all. And I thought that with Joe Tooney there, albeit out of position, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, like they did have some good players. Like their biggest issues were one of the guards because Tooney slid out, and then at right tackle, like that's where they were weakest. And I thought the Eagles could take advantage of that. I thought that I mentioned that if this game were a blowout, it would be because of that, because the pressure, which it was kind of like how Tampa did it to Mahomes and how the Giants did it to Tom Brady, pressuring with four men and dropping everyone else back. The Eagles didn't blitz a single time. Like we did spend some time on the blitz last week, talking about Steve Spagnuolo because he blitzes, or not Steve Spagnuolo. Well, we did talk about that because he blitzes a lot. We talked about that with Jalen Hurts. But then the Eagles, they blitzed at the fifth lowest clip in the NFL heading into the game, and they didn't call a single blitz the entire game, which was like pure genius by Vic Fangio. Like what a big difference he made compared to the defensive coordinator disaster the Eagles had last year. Mm-hmm. He was such a big upgrade. I maybe the biggest upgrade they made in the offseason. Just getting him, he had the number one defense, whereas last year they couldn't stop anything through the air. And I thought just getting pressure on Mahomes so often that led to the two interceptions. Like the first pick, it was that drive was a calamity. It was like sack, 3rd and 16, pick six. And then the second interception, it was Josh Sweat getting caught by Joe Tooney bumping Mahomes as he threw, and then Zach Bond made the pick. Deep in Kansas City territory. So it was essentially two defensive touchdowns, even though it wasn't quite the second defensive touchdown. So that was a big difference in the game. The Eagles won 40-22. You take away those two touchdowns, it's suddenly 26 to 22. It's a close game, albeit like the Chiefs got their points in garbage time. But still, like those two touchdowns that the Eagles got by their defense, that was the difference. And I thought that before the Jalen Hurts deep touchdown to Devontae Smith, I thought Josh Sweat was going to be the MVP of the game. He had 2.5 sacks. He had that pressure that led to the interception. I thought he was going to be MVP. And then Hurts had that great throw. And as soon as that happened, I'm like, yeah, Hurts is going to win MVP. But that was the name of the game. And as we saw in past Super Bowls, when the top quarterback in the NFL was slain, it's all about rushing consistently with four defenders and dropping everyone back, and that's what the Eagles did.
Yeah, so as far as pressure, I mean, I'll look at some of the numbers. PFF puts out these numbers, and Mahomes was pressured on 17 of his 42 dropbacks. And on those 17 pressures, he completed 4 passes. Obviously, he was sacked 6 times, career high, scrambled a couple of times. He completed 4 passes. His average yards per attempt on his 9 attempts was 5.3 yards per attempt. Of course, he had 1 touchdown, and he also had the picks, as you mentioned. But that was the name of the game with the Giants beating the Patriots. It was the rushing 4. But I also wanted to look back. So there was a couple of other games. It was, I believe, 2011, because I was at the Jets-Steelers championship game. And I remember the Jets went to Pittsburgh for that game because they beat the Pats the week before. And that was a big upset. They were like a 10 or 14 point, somewhere in that double-digit range point spread underdog. And Rex Ryan did one of those rush 3, drop 8 into coverage. A couple of years ago, Cincinnati, Kansas City championship game, Kansas City had, I think, 24, 21-3 or something like that, big lead. And Lou Anarumo came out in the second half with, again, a rush 3, drop 8 against Mahomes, completely flustered him. That wasn't about pressure. That was like, oh, what am I seeing right now? I don't know what I'm looking at. There's 8 guys in coverage, and he didn't have any place to go with the football. And now, again, you have 4 guys rushing the entire game. I thought Mahomes was really bad because it wasn't just the Eagles with coverage. It was Mahomes stepping up into the pressure. There was nothing there. He was stepping up. It almost looked, I've said this about Baker Mayfield a few times, when he's trying to do too much. Mahomes just was walking right into the pressure. He had an awful game. Now, credit the Eagles. The Eagles, earned every ounce of that credit they can get. But Mahomes was awful. The picks were bad. Stepping up into the pocket, right into pressure, into guys' hands was bad. There were a couple of throws that he missed. He missed communications. Obviously, Hopkins before halftime had a massive drop. When I saw that on the old 22, he's 100% scoring a touchdown if he doesn't slip and drop a pass. And then he comes out after the game as he's bitching about the refs, about how, what are you going to say now about the calls? How about keep your mouth shut? Don't slip, catch a pass. And listen, I think the game at that point, 24-0 is over. But if he scores, it's 24-6, maybe 24-8. They get the ball. Maybe there's some momentum. That's a huge drop in the game. But that game was over at 17-0. And even before that, going back now, getting away from the pressure, kind of looking at the drive charts, I texted you in the early part of the game that it's 7-0. Mahomes, they go 3 and out. And the game could have been worse. I mean, it hurts if he had one issue in the game. It was that pick on the third drive of the game, on a 3rd and 10, trying to do too much, throwing the ball deep into coverage, with pressure in his face. And he throws a pick there. It probably takes 3 points off the board. But on their next drive, after they've now forced the Chiefs into 3 punts with basically 3 and outs other than the first play of the game for Kansas City, it's 4th and 3, and they're at the 25-yard line, and I'm thinking, there's no way they're kicking here. There's no way. And they come out, and then they end up calling a timeout. I'm thinking, are they really going to kick right now and go up 10-0? I think this is a mistake because are you going to hold Mahomes again, a 4th straight drive? Where now all of a sudden, you kind of been moving the ball at will. They had a pick in the red zone or in the scoring zone. Now you're going to settle for a field goal, and all of a sudden it's going to be 10-0. Mahomes is going to drive the field. It's going to be 10-7, and the momentum is going to completely shift. Instead, he throws a pick 6. Game's over. At that point in time, I figured the Eagles are moving the ball really well. They obviously were held to 10 points. They could have had 13 or 21 points even. And now it's 17-0. This game is toast. At that point, I think the live line was somewhere around 10.5. And I'm thinking, I probably don't want to bet the Eagles right now, but I really don't want to bet the Chiefs. And I was looking for ways to fix, hey, in the past, if you can get the Chiefs 10.5, I think you said at one point you took the Chiefs maybe live.
That's when I middled. That was that 9 or 10.
That's when you tried to take, 9.5.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other way around. When it was 24-0, I was almost ready to lay 16.5, thinking not that the Chiefs weren't going to score, because I really thought the Chiefs were going to score. I didn't think the Chiefs were going to be held like that the entire game. But I thought the Eagles were going to continue to keep their foot on the gas, and that's where I really made money on this game in the second half, is pounding Eagle yards, points, team totals, things of that nature, points in general, total points in general. Just the game, basically, the second half played out almost to a T of what I projected at halftime. So before we get to the halftime and to the live bets in general, I was just really disappointed with Mahomes in the game. I mean, obviously it's the offensive line. He was really bad. I mean, again, pressure or not, Tom Brady, when he was pressured, Peyton Manning, when he was pressured, they were able to diagnose pressure. They were able to tell you or tell their line where that pressure was coming from. And even Brady this week, who, by the way, he was awful in the game. I heard people say they liked him in the game. He contributes absolutely nothing to the broadcast. Maybe he was just giddy because Mahomes wasn't, continuing to catch up to him. But I just thought that he was just so bad. What is he adding to the game? What is he adding to the broadcast? But one thing that he did point out throughout the week is he correctly diagnosed what he's so great at. And what he said he's so great at is pre-snap. I know the answers to the test. I know what's coming. I'm faster at processing the defense. I know what they're going to do. I know exactly what my team is going to do. And I know before I take the ball and call hike that I know exactly where I'm going with the football. And if the play is not there, I'm going to audible to something else, or I'm going to change a route. I'm going to look at my receiver and do something differently. And if the pressure's in my face, I'm going to get rid of the ball. And Manning and Brady and other great quarterbacks Breeze have always been able to do that. And Mahomes, in these two Super Bowls, maybe it's him trying to do too much, but he was not able to diagnose what the defense was doing. Maybe credit to Fangio, but it's not like blitzes were coming and he didn't know where they were coming from. There was no blitz. He didn't know where to go with the football. He's taking a 5-step drop and he's stepping up right into pressure. I was very disappointed in what he brought to the table in this game. Yeah, his receivers may have let him down, but it was 24-0 at that time. And by the time Mahomes started playing like Mahomes, the game was over. So very, very disappointing performance by him. Unbelievable performance by Hurts, completing passes. He should have had more yards. That OPI with Brown was a joke. He should have had another passing touchdown. I mean, Dotson was down at the 1-yard line. So, I mean, obviously that was a beautiful pass by Hurts. His pass to Devontae Smith was a great pass. He was awesome. And when he had a chance to step up into pressure, he took off and ran. And those were back-breaking runs. So I thought Hurts was amazing. Even before you said the pass to Smith, I was sure that he was the MVP of this game. There was no doubt in my mind that he was winning the MVP. Obviously, they want to give it to a quarterback anyway. I thought really the MVP was Vic Fangio, because Fangio was the one who held Kansas City at bay and allowed the Eagles to just continue to step on the throat. And credit to them, credit to the coaching staff, credit to the entire team for doing just that. I said to you last week, there's two ways to beat the Chiefs. Number one, beat them by double digits. Number two, have the lead and somehow run out the clock 10 minutes like they did against Pittsburgh. They won this game by double. This game was over. So that's the way to beat this team. And now we can go back. I'm 3-2 betting Mahomes in the Super Bowl. It's great to be a 60% better. We'll take 60% every year. And if this situation comes up next year, I'll probably tell you, hey, we're going to pick Mahomes at home against Buffalo in the playoffs. We're going to pick Buffalo in Orchard Park in the regular season against the Chiefs. We know it going in. Yep. It'll be your contest pick. It'll be my contest pick. The line will be 3 or 2.5 because that's what it's going to have to be. And we know we're taking it. And so is everybody. So is everybody else. So, we try to. You're not going to hit every game. This was a very disappointing game from a fan perspective, and from a football perspective, we leave it at that, and then we'll move on to our fun stuff and money making process.
Yeah, I thought that you're right. I mean, Mahomes was very disappointing. Like, sure, he was pressured a lot, but there were throws that he could have made, and you pointed out the Hopkins drop. That maybe the most disappointing player from that game was Hopkins. I know, like, he wasn't running that many routes, and like people didn't expect much from him. But like to finally get to the Super Bowl and then to drop that pass, it's just right to him. Like he would have scored, or at least had a huge gain.
No, he would have scored.
Yeah, look, that was
the only other guy that was back had his back turned. I think it was C.J. Gardner-Johnson had his back turned to the play.
Yeah,
there's no way Hopkins doesn't score in that play.
He waited his whole great career for that opportunity, and he just blew it. I was like, how does that happen? It was unbelievable. I don't know if you saw this clip of Travis Kelce. I mean, you could have just seen it live. It was like one play where Mahomes is scrambling and Kelce was just standing there, like not doing anything. It's kind of circulating through Twitter. I think Jason McIntyre retweeted or something like that.
I saw another clip with Kelce where he completely missed a block. And then kind of was like a no man's land, like waltzed out and it's like flat or something. And it's like, I missed this block, so now I'm going to pretend like I'm running a route right now. I'm just going to kind of wing out and not be anywhere close to the play. Mm-hmm. Kelce was a disaster in the game too.
He was terrible. I saw the conspiracy theory that like his whole plan was to propose to Taylor Swift after winning the game, and then when he knew that he wasn't going to win, that like the proposal was off, and so he's like, like screw this, like this game means nothing to me now. And he talked about retiring, so we'll see if he hangs up his cleats. I agree with what you said, with a few things that you said. I'll get to one thing, but to finish my Mahomes thought, the reason why I bet the 9.5 is because I thought that Mahomes is going to, pick up the pace maybe in the second half. Like we've seen it before. We've seen him have ugly halves and then bounce back. Happens all the time with him, especially after the Tyreek Hill trade. I feel like, before the Hill trade, that team was so much more explosive offensively that they were just so much more consistent. But like after the Hill trade, they were like they'd either have like a slow first half and great second half, or vice versa, and it just didn't happen until garbage time. But before I finish, the boss sending us a $49.99 super chat. Thank you so much, the boss. Really appreciate it. Hit Saquon Offensive Player of the Year and Eagles Super Bowl for 15K. Good job, draft time. Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations on your wins. That's so great. Yeah, draft time. I suspect we're going to do great once again. We had a good year last year, an amazing year the year before. We had some like ridiculous plays because it's all Charlie Campbell. Like I have like one or two sources. Charlie Campbell has like a million, so he knows like what most teams are going to do in the draft. So that's usually our biggest video or live stream of the year is when Charlie comes on 2 days before the draft. So yeah, thank you, the boss. Really appreciate the super chat and congrats on your wins. And we're going to have more wins. So looking forward to it. With the two missteps you said what the Eagles had, the Jalen Hurts interception and then the not kicking the field goal. Which I thought not kicking the field goal was weird because they called timeout, and I thought that like, okay,
well, they kicked the field goal. They kicked the field goal.
Right. Yeah, I'm saying like if they were going to go for it, it made sense to call timeout. But like to like why they call timeout just to kick the field goal? Like it feels like they just screwed up.
Well, they didn't want to take the 5 yards. I mean, I guess they didn't want to take a 5-yard loss. Which, by the way, they got a 5-yard penalty, which wasn't a penalty on the Eagles. It was actually a penalty on the Chiefs. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that. And the penalty was like, oh my God, it was a flag. And I'm like, okay, first down. They show the Chief defender kind of jumping into the line, and they called it a false start. I'm like, oh my God, like they're really, really trying to keep this game close.
Yeah, I said that was another bad call too. But it is funny. I just thought that was a weird waste of time out like that. You're right. I mean, it didn't matter anyway. With the Jalen Hurts interception, it was on 3rd and long. I think it was 3rd and 10, and it was almost like a punt. And I actually tweeted out, I'm like, man, Jake Elliott would have missed anyway. But turns out I was wrong. Jake Elliott hit every single kick he attempted in this game. Kind of redeemed himself, although he still screwed me and my dad and anyone who bet the Eagles in the divisional round. But he made amends for that, so I guess that's good for him. I wish I could have my money back, but I mean, it's a great game all around for the Eagles. They did phenomenal. Andrew asking, when are you doing next year's Super Bowl odds? I mean, we can do them later in the show. I don't know if Evan has any thoughts on Super Bowl 60 odds. I bet a few already that I'm going to post either tonight or tomorrow night. So we can get to that in a little bit. So they're saying Eagles win that game 95 times out of 100. What do you think about that?
That's a little aggressive.
Just the way they dominate. I think they win the overwhelming majority. I'm not sure about 95 out of 100, but I do think that.
Well, originally I thought it was more of like a 53-47 Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Now I would probably lean more 55-45 Eagles.
Okay.
I still think these are two very good teams. The Eagles dominated the game, and they played nearly a flawless game. And credit to them. They earned the win. I'm not an anti-Eagles person by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, I bet the Eagles to make the Super Bowl along with the Bills, which allowed me to kind of hedge into the Chiefs being in this game, which allowed me then hedge more on the Eagles to win this game. That being said, I'm not an anti-Eagle person. The Eagles dominated the game, and they deserve to win. But are they 95 out of 100? Absolutely not. That's just not. That's not accurate. If they played this game 100 times, the spread is probably going to be within a field goal pretty much every single time. And again, you don't want to overreact to one game in week one. You don't want to overreact to one game in the playoffs. The Eagles were the better team. The Eagles are the better team, but they're not 95 out of 100 better team. That would imply that their money line would be like a minus 800, and that's not accurate. So they're great. They played great. The coach, every facet of the game, they played great, and credit to them. There's no part of this game where if you play this game the way the Chiefs played and the way the Eagles played, yeah, of course they're going to win 95 out of 100 times, but that's not going to be the case every single time. And same thing a couple of years back with the Chiefs and the Bucs. The Chiefs will be right back next year in the AFC Championship game. They have a lot of work to do in the offseason. Their offensive line was a disaster. Having Joe Thuney playing tackle is a problem. They obviously need receiver help. They have no running game, although I don't think it really matters for them to have such a running game. But they need to improve their offensive line, and that's what they'll do. They'll improve the offensive line, and they'll be a top 3 team in the AFC next year.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice that they can. They know they have to focus on that one thing, the offensive line. You mentioned receiver; they'll at least get Rashi Rice back, and Hopkins is leaving, Marquise Brown's leaving, so they'll have to get another receiver in addition
They
to
might need a
Rashi
tight
Rice.
end too.
Right? Yeah. No, Gray looked pretty decent, but this is a good tight end draft class, so they can get a good tight end at either 31 or 63. So it's not that bad. Receiver, this draft class is okay for receiver. There are going to be a lot of day 2 receivers going, so they could take the receiver with one of those picks. They could draft a tackle 31, and so I think that kind of strategy makes a lot of sense. But they do need to find 2 new tackles. And Trey Smith is a free agent, so if they don't re-sign him, they're going to need a guard as well. So they're going to need 3 new blockers, but really, I mean, their defense is still pretty good. So
Yeah.
I don't think they need to do that much on that side of the ball.
Well, here's a good question for you.
Yeah.
And there's one bet that I love, and it's not available yet, but as soon as it's available, I'm taking it. The minute it becomes available, I'm taking this bet. Where would you price Chiefs win total next year?
What were they? What are they this year? 12 and a half? I think.
This year going in, I'll tell you what the Westgate contest had them at. The Westgate contest. Let's find the Westgate contest lines.
Well, I'm just saying because the Ravens, I believe, were 12 and a half. And,
the Westgate contest had them at 11 and a half.
Really interesting. Yep. I think given that they had 15 wins, and really could have been
priced at 11 and a half to start the season.
Yeah, they could have been 16 if they played the starters against the Broncos at the end. I think it's 12 and a half.
So I would think it's at least 12 and a half.
Yeah.
And
13 is pretty rough, but yeah, 12 and a half.
And I love the under. Because really. There were so many games this year that were the coin flip. It wasn't just that they played close games. They were games that they should have physically lost, like the Broncos game where they got a blocked field goal.
Right.
The Raiders game or or even the Panthers game. Games that they really should have lost. I'm not talking about games like the Ravens where theoretically there could have been a touchdown at the end, which the Ravens may or may not have gone for 2 and not gotten it because the Ravens don't get their 2-point conversions when they do go for 2. The Ravens could have kicked an extra point and the Chiefs could have won that game anyway. The Bengals game was very close. It was a PI or some call at the end that was a BS call. That doesn't necessarily mean they would have lost the game. But there were too many coin flip games where they lucked out. And what we've seen now is that they really don't care about these regular season games. They're not all out to win these games. I mentioned this last week. They do a lot of things in the regular season to gear up for playoffs, whether it's leaving calls in their bag because they don't want to show things that they're going to do in the playoffs, whether that becomes on offensive or defensive side, certain blitz packages that they won't run, plays that they won't run, or even situational football that they won't do correctly because they're practicing for the big picture. And given that they know, hey, it doesn't matter if we're home or road. They obviously want the bye. It's good to have the bye and rest up. But I don't think that they go 15-2 next year. I don't see it. I think a lot of those coin flip games turn them into more of a 12-5 team. And I'd be shocked if their over-under weren't at least 12 and a half. Given where they were this year.
Yeah, I think 12 and a half makes a lot of sense. I don't know if I'd go over or under. I'm not going to like slam the over. Like
I don't slam the under.
I don't see myself betting the over necessarily. Now, if they don't fix their offensive line, maybe the under looks appealing. But if they make some great changes to the offensive line and like suddenly those coin flip games with a better offensive line would have been, blowouts potentially, then suddenly I wouldn't have as much interest in the under. I'd like to see what they do in free agency first. If like Travis Kelce retires, for example, there's a lot of unknowns right now with that offense. If they find another receiver, if they find 2 upgrades on the offensive line and Kelce returns, like suddenly this team's going to look great heading into the regular season. I don't quite know what their schedule is, like as far as their opponents are concerned.
Before you see the schedule come out.
What do you say?
I generally don't even look at taking bets before the schedule is released.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither.
Now the win totals will come out before that.
Right.
And that's something to really, be mindful of. But I am sure that really the people who are betting and moving those numbers are going to be on that under. So if you can get on that under early before the line moves or before the odds move, I like that under if it's 12 and a half. I need 13 wins from them to beat me. First of all, injuries happen. Mahomes played almost every game. If there's a game or two that he misses for concussion protocol, you have a positive EV bet right there. But if they're in the position to maybe have the bye late, listen, we know they're playing a first place schedule. We know they're going to play the Ravens again. We know they're going to play the Bills again. I don't remember who they're playing in the NFC. So we know the teams that they're playing, but they're playing a first place schedule. So they're going to have difficult games. They're going to have teams gunning for them as usual. And they've proven that they just don't care as much about the regular season. And it's not about, well, if they have a better offensive line, they're going to win by more. To me, if they have a better offensive line, they'll just maybe be more comfortable. But they're still going to do the gimmicky stuff that they do and save the bag of tricks for the Bills game or for later. And the fact that they beat the Bills in the playoffs, like they're going to go into that Bills game in Orchard Park again. Like, all right, you want to beat us now? Great. We know we're going to beat you in the regular season.
Here's their opponents to put on the screen. They play the NFC East, which is, I'd say, pretty neutral because they have the Eagles and Redskins. But they also
where's the Philly game? That's at home.
It's at Kansas City.
They're going to be ready for that game.
Yes. They also play the Lions, also at Kansas City. So that's their special NFC opponent.
Okay. First place schedule. These are tough games.
Yeah. Although they do get a break with the division in the conference, which is the AFC South. So they get
and they play Houston at home.
Yes. They get Houston at home.
All their tough games are at home. The Eagles game is at home. Baltimore is at home.
It's just not Buffalo's.
So Philly, Baltimore, and Houston are all at home.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, these are taken into account when they make the lines, when they make the over-unders. That's all taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love the under 12.5, and that's where they're going to be priced. I don't think teams really get that 13 number. Maybe they do, but I think the line's going to be 12.5.
Yeah, I think I'm just tilted from getting burned by that Ravens. I had the Ravens under 12.5 last year, and it looked great when they're 0-2 after losing to the Raiders, and and they got their 13th win in the final week against the Browns, who just didn't show up at all. That was pretty tilting. So I don't know. I kind of like jaded, but it depends. Like I said, if they don't do anything to improve the offensive line, under 12.5 is going to look pretty good. But if they fix their issues, then I think they could definitely win 13 plus games. I don't know, but you're right. I mean, Mahomes might miss games, although Carson Wentz is one of the premium backups. We'll see if he stays too. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not kind of like torn on that right now. I don't think we have complete information on that. Plus, we don't quite know what the number is, although I do think it'll be 12.5. What do you think about the Eagles going forward? Like they lost Kellen Moore, their offensive coordinator. He's now head coach of the Saints. They have some free agents. They have multiple defensive linemen free agents like Josh Sweat, Milton Williams. There's one other guy, Brandon Graham's going to retire.
So the Eagles, so obviously last year they were awful to end the year. When I did my handicapping for this year, I had them third to start the season. I had them number 3 in my power rankings to start the year at a plus 6.5. So they've been pretty consistent throughout the year. Obviously, after they lost to the Bucs in week 4, that was as low as I had them all year. They never went below a plus 2.5. And then I immediately had them kind of rising throughout their win streak. We actually talked about them before that Browns game that they won, the Giants game that they won. And we were on them for a lot of those games. And so I don't know why somebody's saying I'm an anti-Eagle. I've been off them. This couldn't be further from the truth. Went 2-2 and then won the playoffs. But anyway, so I had the Eagles third to start the season, and I thought it was all about Fangio. I thought that change in coordinator was massive, and Fangio is still there. And also, it takes time for these teams to pick up these new defenses. So I'm not surprised that the first couple of weeks of the season were challenging for them, and they kind of figured it out afterwards. Obviously, Roseman has done an unbelievable job. Their defense is loaded. Old Georgia Bulldogs and a couple of top-level DBs in Mitchell and DeJean. So you have great talent, you have great leadership, and now there's a lot of confidence. The question is, it's hard to repeat. It's hard to get back to this spot. I would say going into next season, they're definitely the number 1 team in the NFC. They might be the number 1 team in the league. So if you want to pull up their schedule, we could take a quick glance and see if there's any really
It's
tough
right there.
games.
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Is that it?
No, wait.
It's Kansas City.
I had that in the wrong window. Sorry. Here it goes. Just copy paste. Here we go. So they also have the Bills that play in Buffalo. They play in Kansas City, in LA for the Chargers, in Minnesota. That's pretty tough off the bat. But I mean they do get
home.
Yeah, Detroit's at home. They do get Rams are at home. They do get the Raiders, Broncos. They're in Tampa.
I mean, the Washington's good, and Dallas is going to be if they have a team healthy, then they'll be better. But I still like the Eagles in the division.
I'm pretty down in Dallas. But
at Green Bay, at Buffalo, at Green Bay, at Kansas City. It's not going to be an easy schedule for sure.
Yeah,
I would say their line will be probably priced around 11.5.
Yeah,
I went over this year. I also took them to win the division this year. I also parlayed their over with the Chiefs over and parlayed their divisional win with the Chiefs divisional win. Those were a couple of plays that I made on DraftKings prior to the season. I don't know that I would take, depending on where the odds are, I would still probably take them to win the division. I wouldn't want to lay more than like a minus 125 ballpark. Again, injuries kind of throw these bets off. So I still like them to win the division. If the line is 11.5, I'd have to consider that over. I probably wouldn't be on the under 11.5. I don't think it'll be 12.5 given that schedule. But it's not easy to win 12, 13 games. There's always injuries. There's weeks where, Hurts missed a half a game this year because of the injury. So, and then, of course, late in the season, do they need to win that game, against the Giants in week 18, which they did win, but they rested everybody. So it's a tough play at 11.5. But they're definitely going into the season, barring any really significant upgrades elsewhere, even with the loss of Kellen Moore, I would say they're probably the number. Because Detroit has lost Ben Johnson, which I think is a bigger loss than the Eagles losing Kellen Moore, I would probably lean towards having the Eagles as my top power rated team in the NFC.
Yeah, I think going into the season, I think you have to have them atop your power rankings. I think I'd have them number one. But, I mean, you do have any sort of distractions. Teams that win Super Bowls often, are kind of like sort of a malaise, unless the team has done it so many times, like the Chiefs did this year, coming off their second win in a row. The Eagles, they had such a down 2023. I don't know they made the playoffs, but this still is a very disappointing close to the year. And winning the Super Bowl this year, like there could be a hangover of some sort, even though they're really talented. It'll be interesting to see what they do with offensive coordinator, because coordinators are such a big deal. I said this on a Thursday show with Andy, and he laughed at it because of like the stupidity of some of the fans. Heading into 2023, when right after the Eagles lost in the Super Bowl the first time against the Chiefs, I live right outside of Philly, and so like whenever, and people know what I do, so like the first thing anyone asks me, like when they see me, they're like, hey, Walt, how are the Eagles going to do this year? Because it's summer, heading into 2023, I'm like, they have talent, but I don't know. Their offensive and defensive coordinators left. I have concern about like who these new guys are, and like I would say like 80% of Eagles fans will always respond, who cares about coordinators? Well, or do great. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like right. That's the stupidest thing. And we saw it firsthand this year. They found Kellen Moore. They found Vic Fangio, made all the difference in the world. Vic Fangio is still going to be there, so the defense should still be great. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with the offensive coordinator. They're still going to have Saquon Barkley. They're still going to have a great offensive line. Still have Hurts.
Look around the league. Spags has been unbelievable with Kansas City's defense. Yeah. Yeah. The MVPs, coaching wise, like Brian Flores on Minnesota, their defense was unbelievable all year. I mean, you look at a team like the Jets, had a great defense. All of a sudden, Saleh is out. I mean, he's the head coach, but he was really the D coordinator. He's out. Their defense now falls off a cliff. The coaches that are basically coordinating, like O'Connell, for example, on Minnesota also, even though he's not a coach, he's also basically the OC.
Right.
So these coordinators who are either the play callers or the defensive side of the ball matters a lot. I mean, the Niners bringing back Robert Saleh now for their DC is a huge move. So coordinators mean a lot. And I don't think with the Eagles, they're not really losing anybody, right? A lot of their defense is young, so that's important. And their offense, they already have Barkley. He's signed. Hurts is signed, right? These guys are not going anywhere. The offensive line, they'll continue to improve. Mailata's not going anywhere. The other guys are not going. I mean, they had injuries at center, so they'll get guys back, and then their offensive line will still be a top 3 or 4 offensive line in the league. They also have continuity on the offensive line. A lot of teams, like we mentioned, the Chiefs, need new players to plug in. You might get great guys to plug and play, but there's no continuity now. So the Eagles have a huge leg up coming back with probably relatively the same team, same core, and other than OC, same coaching staff. So we'll see who they get, but it's like the new offensive coordinator is not going to change the tush push. Buffalo might need to hire somebody who can teach them how to run that play. The Eagles don't need to learn how to run that play. They kind of run it to perfection. Saquon Barkley, will he have 2,000 yards again? Probably not. They probably want to keep him a little bit fresher for a 20-game grind. So not going for that record, and credit to him, not necessarily caring late in games that are blowouts. Does he need to go and break records? He says, let the other guys eat. Good for him. He had a monster year. He doesn't need those extra, 100 yards or 200 yards throughout the course of the season. He needs to stay fresh. So, I mean, the Chiefs' game plan was we got to take Saquon out of the game. And they did. And the Eagles would run the ball into the line, It's 3rd and 8, and Hurts would make a great play. Hurts would take off with his legs. Hurts would make a great throw. So Barkley not having a great game on paper, he still was a huge part of this game because the Chiefs just sold out to stop him. And by selling out to stop him, it opened up the rest of the game for Hurts, who then, to his credit, made the plays. So if they didn't have Barkley in that game, maybe they don't load the box on 1st and 2nd down. Maybe they don't line up to really sell out to stop him. Yeah. So I still think even with his minimal stats in the game, he still played a huge role. Just his threat on the field really changes everything for a defense. So he almost adds to the team by just being out there as a decoy in some respects. And I know he's not a decoy. I know he wasn't a decoy, but the Chiefs loaded the box to stop him, and Hurts took advantage. So you have to be able to execute. You have to be able to take advantage. You have to be aggressive play calling. Other than the 4th and 3 field goal, I thought the Eagles were aggressive for the most part. The downfield passing, which we'll talk about as we talk live betting and props, I thought was very. I would have been shocked if they didn't continue doing that. That was my theory at halftime, was that they're going to continue throwing the ball and attacking downfield, and they did it well. So as long as you have an offensive coordinator who's in line with the coaching staff, who's in line with that aggressive mentality, who lets the players perform and sets them up to perform and to succeed, the Eagles will be a top 1, 2, 3 team going into the playoffs, barring injury. And they'll be a very tough out, especially if they're at home, for teams like Detroit or other teams in the NFC if they have to go to Philly and win in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's not make a mistake. Washington, they killed Washington the week before. The Rams were on the 20-yard line with a chance to win the game in a game that should have been over. Yeah. So this is a very, very good team, but there are at least 6 or 7 teams in the league that are right there with Philadelphia, with Baltimore, with Buffalo, that are all worthy of a Super Bowl contending title. And it's not that 1 or 2 teams are head and shoulders. This is not the Warriors a couple of years ago who are, if you play them in a series, they're probably not going to lose unless Draymond Green gets suspended, right? This is not an NBA type of series where one team is just so much better and they're going to win 4 out of 7 games. In these games are tight. These lines are going to be against the top teams. They're not a 7-point plus favorite against the top 5 teams in the league.
Yeah, I was kind of like trying to figure out how to order these teams, like my power rankings. I haven't released my power rankings yet, but I will heading into 2025 soon, maybe next week. And I was like just thinking the NFC is so loaded. I think the AFC is very top heavy. You have the Chiefs, you have the Bills, Ravens. Then there's like a huge drop off after that. You could have some teams rise up this year. Maybe the Texans bounce back. Maybe the Chargers take the next step with Bengals with that ownership not spending money. I think that they're going to be in mediocrity for a long time. I think they're going to be like 8-9, 9-8, 10-7 for a long time. So I'd be surprised if they ever got back to where they were back when Joe Burrow had a rookie year contract.
And they may lose T. Higgins too.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, they could be a lot worse. So like maybe the Jaguars with Liam Cohen, I like that hire a lot. Maybe they're more competitive. Maybe Trevor Lawrence bounces back. And Chargers, maybe they take the next step with Jim Harbaugh. Like there's some teams that could maybe move up in the rankings, but it feels like the NFC has so many good teams. Like you have the Eagles, Redskins next year are going to be terrifying. They have the third most cap space in the NFL. The Lions, the Vikings. The Vikings have a ton of cap space too. We'll see what McCarthy does quarterback, but like heading into last year, no one gave the Vikings a chance because of Sam Darnold, and McCarthy was Kevin O'Connell's handpicked guy, and they're going to get Christian Darrisaw back, and they have all this money to spend on they have a quarterback on a rookie deal. The Bears are going to be better next year with Ben Johnson. The Packers were
hopefully the Niners are healthy and they get a little better.
Yeah. McCaffrey's 100%. Yeah, Niners absolutely could get back. Rams are always going to be competitive if Stafford and Nakua are healthy. You have NFC. I was going to mention NFC South, but Michael Penix looked good at the end of last year. So I wouldn't say Atlanta's necessarily a good team yet, but they have the potential to be. Like there are just so many good teams in the NFC that it's just so hard to just say, oh, the Eagles is definitely going to make it back to the Super Bowl, or at least have a really good chance, because there's so many teams that can knock them off. And you said it, like, yeah, the Rams are close, albeit like Jalen Hurts did get injured in that game, but still, like the Rams could have come back and won. And now the Redskins are going to have Jane Daniels with experience. The Lions, if they can stay healthy, you were talking about how you rated the Eagles during the regular season. I had the Lions as the number one team. I think I had the Eagles as number two for a while, maybe Bills. I had like Lions 1, and then either Bills or Eagles 2 and 3 in some order. But when Aiden Hutchinson went down, I think that's when I made the shift to move the Eagles to number 1. But what if the Lions have everyone healthy next year? What if Hutchinson, Ali McNeil, Carlton Davis, like all those players stay healthy? Like they're going to be a great team too. Like
right, I would just again, the coordinator wise, be concerned of like who's how does my play calling change? The other thing to pay attention to is schedule, not just who you're playing, but when. Right, how many teams are going to have back-to-back road games, or a situation like we had this year with Christmas, where teams are just playing 3 games in a span of 11 days or 14 days, something like that. So traveling overseas. I forgot who's playing in Ireland this year early in the season. I think it's
the Steelers are hosting it, but I don't think they announce who's going against them.
Right. So you have a lot of that situation to contemplate. If you look at the Niners were a last place team this year. They're playing a last place schedule, and they play the AFC South. So the Niners schedule is an absolute joke if you want to pull up the Niners schedule. And we'll talk in the playoffs, if that team makes the playoffs, resumes. And I can tell you right now, if you look at this, it's like, oh my God, wait, who is good on this roster? Who is good on this schedule?
All right, let's look at it. They're at Arizona. Well, obviously the division. At the Browns, at Texans, at Colts, divisional game, at Saints, at Giants, division. Home against Atlanta, home against Carolina, home against Jacksonville, home against Tennessee, home against Chicago. Oh my God.
Joke.
At Tampa, and Tampa's terrible.
And what's crazy? So when the Eagles made the Super Bowl a few years ago, if you remember back before that season began, my first bet of the offseason 3 years ago, whenever it was, the Eagles over-under was 9.5. And the Eagles had the biggest joke of a schedule that I've ever seen. And they were a very, very good team, and they had like a last-place schedule. So you go into that season, it's like, this is actually a pretty decent team. They maybe not the best team, but they're pretty good. And they play nobody. And their line is 9.5. Like, they're going to eat this total easily. And the Niner total next year, I mean, just based on this schedule, should be at least 10.5 wins. So again, if they're healthy, they get a DC back. They're going to trade their receiver/offensive lineman Deebo Samuel. They're going to be a better team. They'll probably overpay Purdy, which is unfortunate, but they have to pay a quarterback, so they'll probably overpay him. And let's see how they allocate money elsewhere. But for 1 year, this is a bottom schedule. And these things matter because this might determine if they have to go to Philly or if Philly goes to San Francisco. Philly will be much scarier at home against any of these teams. San Francisco, Detroit really especially. We know Goff, how different he could be indoors versus outdoors. Yeah. Same thing for Stafford. If they play indoors versus coming out to the East Coast, especially in a snow potential game. So that schedule that they play and win, those differences, 1 or 2 wins, listen, Buffalo went to Kansas City instead of vice versa. I would have loved to see Philly go to Detroit, even though I was on the Redskins in that game against Detroit. I think as an NFL fan, if you ask me really who I want to see in that game, it's Philly at Detroit. I thought that would have been one of the better games of the potential playoffs, potentially of the season. So we were kind of robbed of that situation. But Detroit in Philly that's a much different outcome, much different line potential. Maybe a 5-6 point line swing versus that venue, just given the indoor versus outdoor team. So the schedules matter. This is obviously a great team. They're coming back with their core. I don't think the OC will matter much, just given the way they are and the way they're built. But going into next season, are they a 95% win team? Absolutely not. They're 7 to 1 in the Super Bowl. If you love it, take it now. I don't think those odds will change much. I don't think there's a real rush or necessity on playing the Eagles because I don't think they'll get markedly better. It's not like they're going to get Myles Garrett. You mentioned this last week. If Washington picks up Myles Garrett, those odds change a lot. Philly's not getting Myles Garrett. I mean, I don't think they're getting Myles Garrett. So depending on
never count out Howie Roseman.
Yeah, exactly. So he moves the line. He will move the odds of somebody, whether it be Washington or somebody like a Washington. He will have a positive or a real tangible impact on the line for futures. But otherwise, and we can talk about this later. So I do want to talk about some of the live bets and some of the props that we went through. But Myles Garrett, if you have some inclination like, a certain team might get him, maybe that's where I play a future. Otherwise, as far as the Eagles or the other top 5 or 6 teams, put them on ice, revisit it when the schedule comes out, see where there might be value. But really, with those 7 to 1, 8 to 1 teams, I don't see any value. I don't see any value in playing Super Bowl futures on the top 5 or 6 teams in the league.
So I'm going to pull this up now. I had not loaded this onto the site, and I wanted to load it because of this discussion. There we go. Niners 17 to 1. I found it too. And I was like, I didn't even look at the schedule. I was like, this team was so injured last year. If they get on the right track health-wise, they could be a force. And I think that 17 to 1 is a great number.
Yeah, and they could be a 1 seed by a product of their schedule, as you just saw, as an absolute joke.
Yeah, 100%. So 17 to 1, and just seeing the schedule, I want to bet more on this. I bet a half unit to win 8.5.
Well, you bet the Eagles at 17 to 1 last year.
I did.
There you go. That 17 to 1 is a magical number.
Exactly. And yeah, maybe it's a sign. So yeah, 17 to 1. I think it's great. I would ideally like to see McCaffrey's status, but if it's announced that he's 100%, maybe that line moves. So I want to just get ahead of it.
Well, it did move because I saw it at 14 to 1. So I don't know where you got 17 to 1.
Bet Rivers. I'm going to check right now if Bet Rivers. By the way, Bet Rivers. I told you about this. They have this like really cool feature where you have these like prop packs. If you bet a singing parlay in the NBA, you get these cards. They're one-time use, but like depending on how many points that player gets, you win like whatever, like either a bonus bet or a profit boost. And they're like different tiers, it's like bronze, silver, or gold for each player. I got a gold LeBron last week, and he scored 40 points. They got me a $500 bonus bet, and that's what I bet on. That was my hedge with the Chiefs. I was just throw it on the Chiefs, like, hey, it's a free roll. So anyway, yeah, Niners, man, they're down to 14 to 1 on Bet Rivers, unfortunately. So I don't know.
We took out the 17s.
Yeah. Well, look. Hopefully we find something there soon. I didn't. Maybe Bookmaker has that, but yeah. Also, before we get more into this, actually want to, and I'll look at this when you talk next. But we had a couple of questions here that I want to get to before we talk about the props that we had in the Super Bowl. Let's see, top 10 quarterbacks in order: Allen, Burrow, Herbert, Stafford, Goff, Mayfield, Purdy, Darnold, Rodgers, Winston. Like, I want to see Winston play a full 17 games next year. If I'm the Browns and like I don't like either quarterback, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start Winston for 17 games. I don't care how many interceptions you throw. It's going to be fun. If we go 2-15, that's great. We're going to get Arch Manning, and then we're going to be happy.
Is Mahomes and Lamar purposely not on this list, or is this just like of these quarterbacks?
Yeah, well, John's a Bills fan, so I think he just left off.
He just left off.
Yeah. All right, the boss. Yeah, once again, thank you, the boss, for that awesome super chat. Offensive Player of the Year odds on DraftKings. I didn't see him. I looked real quick. Maybe if I refresh the page. I don't know why they're giving me this thing. All right, let's go to football. I know that.
I wonder what Jamar Chase's odds would be.
Yeah, that would be pretty good with Higgins gone. Yeah, you're right.
Because Jamar Chase may not have T. Higgins next to him, and
Yeah.
Jamar Chase doesn't have Lou Anarumo coaching their defense anymore,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was a mistake to get rid of him, even though their defense was really bad this year.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I don't know if that was his fault. It might have been more the fault of the team losing a bunch of players. When you lose like a top 3 or 4 or 4 of your top 5 defensive players, that's probably not a good thing. And now you lost your coordinator also. So that's a problem. That team might be a team that's going to have to put up a ton of points and be throwing. And we already saw what Jamar Chase can do. We know what Jamar Chase can do. My only hesitation with Jamar Chase is he might get paid. And when some of these guys get paid, they tend to not go to the gym as much.
So, yeah, that's definitely true.
Debo Samuel posted a picture from the gym, and I'm like, he hasn't seen a gym in 3 years.
Yeah, that's funny. So, based on this 18-1 number, which I've seen, I think I would go Bengals under wins. The Niners here are DraftKings by 15-1, so a little bit better than the 14-1. So I went to awards here. I'm not. Oh, here we go. Offensive Player of the Year. Okay, here we go. Saquon plus 550. Jahmyr Gibbs 9-1. Henry 12-1. Chase. There you go. There's Chase at 12-1, who I think it's worth a shot. Bijan 14-1. Puka 16-1.
Bijan might be a good option at 14-1. Like I said, Chase would be the one that I look to. A guy like a Puka. Now that you know Cup's not going to be there, he kind of takes over. Puka could give you the kind of season that Cup had a couple of years ago. That's a shot to take. Justin Jefferson at, what is that, 16-1?
16-1.
See, I wouldn't play a Barkley at 5-1. That makes no sense. Right?
Yeah, you can probably always find a better number, week 3, week 4. Yeah.
Right. And you can get better numbers later on. So, these are kind of like shots in the dark. McCaffrey 20-1. Malik Neighbors 30-1, Lamar at 33-1. Those are better plays to me.
Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, but I like Lamar and Josh Allen at those numbers better, or Jaden at those numbers better.
Well, they usually give the Offensive Player of the Year to non-quarterbacks because MVP is the quarterback award. Yeah, sometimes the quarterback wins, but it's not often.
Honestly, I don't play these. I don't really find a lot of value in these. These are kind of like throwing shots in the dark.
Yeah, I do like the Chase call. If I had to bet one thing here, I think it'd be Jamar Chase.
Except here's the problem: Chase there is 12-1. Yeah. I'm playing live Super Bowl bets at 12-1. I'm playing live throughout the season, which I've given out every single week, 12, 15, 16-1 bets in game for 10 minutes. You're talking about a bet now for a year. I mean, listen, you can tie up capital however you like, but there's better ways to utilize your money than tying up 12-1 shots, which are really, really. I mean, you're flipping coin. You're not even flipping coins right now. 12-1.
Yeah, I laugh because we talked about cover calls so often. Like it's just free money every week. So you're right. Like tying up capital is pretty rough. Yeah, if you're gonna bet one of these, I'd wait until Labor Day.
At least.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't do it now, but like I said, if you wanted to bet one of these, if I gun to my head, if I had bet one of these, I think it would be Jamar Chase 12-1. That still looks the best to me. And he also asked about golf bets. The golf bets are on the site, on the homepage. You'll see it's at the top. It's on one of the pictures. Also, the second link for the other updates for today. We're betting Rory at 7-1. Although, as I pointed out, you can get profit boosts on Caesars and BetMGM, I think. So you can get like 9-1 or 8-1. Also, Justin Thomas and Taylor Pendrith and a couple others. So you can check that out. So thank you again, was the boss. And the Bobby Slowick hire decrease or increase the Dolphins Super Bowl odds. Do you see that? I found that hilarious. They hired him as the passing game coordinator. I'm like, this
Well,
guy
if he's a
ran the
passing game
ball.
coordinator, he's not going to run the ball on 2nd and 10.
Right. This guy just ran the ball on early downs. That's all he did. Now he's the
The
passing
key
game
is to
coordinator.
call him the passing game coordinator and say, Bobby, you're here to pass. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So
What do you think about this, JT Thompson? Betting is stupid. Play with your kids and save for the future.
I couldn't disagree with you more. I use my gambling winnings to do the most fun things with my kids. I took my boys to San Francisco for Niners Lions championship game straight from proceeds from gambling. I took my girls to a bunch of different games to see Caitlin Clark against LSU last year. I mean, I don't necessarily take my hard-earned income from my real careers to do crazy things with my kids. And if I weren't winning some of these bets, then I just probably wouldn't end up buying championship game tickets and flying cross country to San Francisco for a game. But when you win, sometimes you do think, I'm like, listen, these are not bets that you're going to win to pay your mortgage or to pay for tuition. This is things to do for fun. So if you're playing for fun and you're winning and you can do some extra fun things, especially with kids and family, God bless. And betting is definitely not stupid. Just do it responsibly. You don't go crazy. No one's putting thousands of dollars on Jamar Chase to win the Offensive Player of the Year right now. But we are playing thousands of dollars on the Eagles over 7.5 points in the second half, because that is just a dumb line. That is a mistake. And that may be a good transition to some of the live bets that we made, and then maybe a little bit more on the SGPs and the props, which couldn't have been better. If you listened to the show last week and you kind of tailed us, you won. And even though I got the game wrong, who's going to win the game? I picked the Chiefs. This was my second best Super Bowl, and to the tune of over 50 units in profit. And by the way, my Eagles Chiefs winner was hedged. Couldn't lose. Didn't win as much, but like you, Walt, going into the game, you are not going to lose. And you have futures tickets or tickets from previous games and weeks with plus money, and then hedge it out properly and then move on. Because I had like 2% of my bankroll on the winner and 98% on props and live bets and SGPs, like we said last week. And it was one of the game was so bad that all I did in the second half, I was taking live bets almost every 2 minutes. And I got limited by FanDuel mid-game as I showed you a ticket. I sent you the screenshot. I sent you the ticket. I don't remember if it was late third quarter, early fourth. FanDuel limited me mid-game. They said, we had enough of your bets. We had enough of your action. And I promise you I'm not betting thousands of dollars a bet.
I could tell you exactly what it was.
Millions of dollars. I'm not winning tens of thousands of dollars. They limit you because you're killing them. It's like every bet I take is against their machine, against their algorithm. They're just finding mistake after mistake after mistake. And it is so easy if you watch. Now, do you want to sit and watch a game with 2 computers open and 3 betting accounts open? That's not really the way to watch football. That game was so bad that I'm like, heck, if I'm going to sit and watch this game, I might as well take advantage. And I literally got limited mid-game. So
yes, is it 9:47? You got limited. That's when you texted me that screenshot.
9:47.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know exactly at what point in the game that was, but maybe late third or something. But
I think it was late third, because I think between quarters I was like scrambling, like this is such a joke.
Yeah.
My max bet on FanDuel is now $64.70.
Well, try PointsBet. My max bet on PointsBet is like $5. That's just pull all my money. There's no point in having that. I also got limited on my draft bets at Bovada, but Bovada closed down in PA, so I can't even use them anyway. Before we get into what you bet, so I'm sure I can't wait to hear it myself. So JT Thompson with this, just last thing here, like, if when you're making informed bets, like you have, like if you're truly right, or if you have like a good take on it, like you're gonna be winning most of the time. And so it's not like you're playing slots or something. You go to a casino, like playing the roulette or playing slots, like that's stupid. Then you're just gambling your money away. Yeah, you might win, but the chances are you're going to lose. Like that's stupid. And even online, like I got these like free slot things. I think it was FanDuel. I'm not sure what sportsbook it was, but they was like, hey, you got 20 free spins. I'm like, okay, might as well. It was like the stupidest thing in the world. It's like I did like 20 slot things. I won nothing. I'm like, that was just a waste of time. Like, I just don't get how people do that. But yeah, if you're going to make informed decisions, if you do the research, if you get the right odds, if you could do the math correctly, like, you can make money and save for your kids' future with this money, or use the money to invest and then save for your kids' future, which I do for my kids. I have 2 accounts for them. I just sell cover calls for them every week, and my daughter's account is up like 50% over half a year, so it's going great. So anyway, I kind of want to get into all the bets you made. So if you want to take us through what you did during the Super Bowl.
Well, live betting. So let's talk live betting. We talked very briefly before the show, and we've talked about this in the past when it comes down to college football. And sometimes you have big spreads where a team that's big dogs are leading. So how do you take advantage of algorithms that are set pregame that are not adjusting correctly? So for example, here you have a second half total, which is like 24 and a half points. You know that going in. That's not changing, right? There's actually exactly 24 in the first half. The second half total was 24 and a half. But because the Chiefs are down by so much, the line changes. So what's the pregame odds? The pregame spread is basically a pick'em, right? Chiefs by a half in the first half, Chiefs by a half in the second half. That's the number. That's what theoretically, if the game played out like a computer from 0 to 60 minutes, the Chiefs are basically tied or up by 1. Let's say it's 14-13 or 13-10, something like that, or 10-10 or 13-13 at halftime. And once again, the spread in the second half would be 24 and a half pick'em, or 24 and a half Eagle, Chiefs -1. But because the Chiefs are down by now 24, the spread is Chiefs -7.5. There's an adjustment that's made to the Chiefs line. Is there an adjustment that is made to the total? The answer is it is no. There's no adjustment made to the total. And I did this 20 years ago, 15 years ago with NBA second half betting under the same premise. Totals were not adjusting and the spreads were. So if one thing is adjusting, why isn't the other? So my premise here to take advantage is not to bet the Chiefs -7.5 or 6.5. Yes, I do like the over at this point, which I bet, but I more like the Eagles team total over, which I bet. I also bet the Chiefs team total over, expecting a couple of things. Number one, the Chiefs now can't play this methodical dink and dunk game. They have to take chances. Number two is they have to go for fourth downs, even if they're in their own zone. Number three, I fully expect the Eagles to continue to attack downfield and be aggressive. So those 3 ideas, those three theories, the opposite would be the Chiefs can't move the ball, or they move the ball, it takes them time and they fail. And on the flip side, the Eagles just run the clock, and punt. That was not my premise, and that was the way to lose, because obviously nothing is guaranteed. So if the game played out where the Chiefs are taking chances, throwing the ball, trying to throw deep, and going for fourth downs or going for on their own side of the field, and the Eagles will continue to attack, then that line of 7.5 is a bad line. So I bet over 7.5. As the game proceeds, I want to go into the first drive of the game, of the second half, just to kind of give you a sense of where I was at the time. Chiefs come out, they punt. Eagles drive the field, and they get the ball down to the it's first and goal at the 4. So at this point, they have 24 points, and the line moves up from 31.5 to 33.5. Same number, right? You're playing over 7.5 or 9.5. Now, unless they miss an extra point, which is possible, or unless they kick 3 field goals, which is also possible, there's no difference between betting over 7.5 and 9.5. So the line is now moving. I bet at this point, I actually turned to my dad and I said, Dad, 9.5 for the Eagles. He's looking at me like, huh? I'm like, they're on the 6-yard line. Will they score 10 points in the rest of this game? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, good. So we take over 33.5. So now I have over 31.5, over 33.5. Now this is FanDuel. Then I look at alternate totals. The alternate total for 37.5, so 13.5 points, was plus 270. And the alternate total for 40.5 is plus 850, which I gave to you at that moment. And I said, bet it. And you said, oh, the line's like 7-1. I'm like, yeah, because I just bet it at plus 850. So now you're getting it at 700. Yeah. Now, the Eagles don't score a touchdown on this drive. They go backwards and they kick a field goal. So that sucks, right? Yeah. But they still get 3 points, and we still need a very possible them to get 41 and, of course, 38. And I'm continuing to play now over. At this point, they have, 24? They have, they kick a field goal, so they have 20. Was it 27 at the time? Yeah, they go up 27-0. The Chiefs turn the ball over on downs at midfield. One play later, it's 34-0. Now I have my over 31.5, my over 33.5, and I'm going to continue to bet over 37.5, 40.5. By the fourth quarter, I'm now hedging with under 41.5. I'm going to try to middle that 41. Of course, I didn't get there. I didn't get my plus 850, but I got several bets on the Eagles over 7.5, 9.5, and 13.5, and I got plus 270 on those numbers. And of course, I won my hedge on under 41.5. So I'm playing those. Another bet that I gave you and several other people at halftime is Hurts has 123 passing yards at halftime. His total at the time was 53.5 more yards. I'm looking at this like, this is a joke. The script of this game, he's throwing the ball. And I texted you and like 3 or 4 other people. I'm really busy at halftime because I'm taking like 20 SGPs at this time also. I heard I didn't miss out much on the halftime show.
But, we can talk about that after.
Yeah, oh my God. So and one of my friends who I do text often, he says to me like, no, don't bet it because they're going to be running. I'm like, trust me. Some of my friends know, like, I'm giving you this bet. There's a mistake here. You got to take over 179.5 immediately. If you don't want it, don't bet it. Don't question it. Don't start asking me my rationale. I'll tell you my rationale later. Right now, I'm busy. You're on this text thread. Take over 179.5 passing yards Hurts. And at the same time, take Mahomes over passing yards in the second half. And go on to your live FanDuel SGPs and take Mahomes and Hurts 175. Take Mahomes 200, Hurts 175. Take Mahomes 200, Hurts 200. And continue to go in increments of 25 on the alternate lines. And as you ladder these, you will continuously getting plus money. Now, I got lucky because not only did Hurts get his 200, and of course he went over that 179, but Mahomes got the 250. So these are massive payouts as you continue to ladder this like 6 times over and then continuously bet it throughout the game, that if you're playing live SGPs, you talk about laying 12-1 right now. I got well over 12-1 on these SGPs. So when you combine them all, right, the 250, 200, the 225, 200, 200, 200, 200, 175, and so on down the list, you watch these games play out, and there's no reason not to take advantage of the totals in game, which are frankly a mistake. How can Hurts' over-under for yards in the second half be 53? That sounds insane. Unless you think, oh, they're up 24-0, they're just going to run the ball. They're not going to run the clock out. Sirianni has proven that they throw the ball downfield. Hurts is moving the ball very, very nicely. They continue to take shots downfield. The touchdown pass to Devontae Smith, beautiful pass. But it wasn't just that pass. He went over by 50 yards. So we doubled our bet. We doubled that win easily. And all those bets, all those live bets, just constantly. And the ones that I lost were Saquon, where Saquon had 51 yards. And now we're in the fourth quarter. So I bet Saquon over 60, 70, and 80. And the 80, by the way, was 16-1. It's plus 1,600 FanDuel. This is all on FanDuel. This is why I got limited on FanDuel mid-game. So you are taking Saquon 29 more yards plus 1,600. I lost. He ended up with 57. No problem. That's okay. I had Saquon to get to 200 or 300 a couple of times this season, hit 16-1 twice. So it's okay. But the point is, I would take that bet 100 times over. He has 51 yards in the fourth quarter of a blowout game. You know, throughout the season, they've given him these carries to close games out, and he's broken touchdown runs. So when you have a situation where I can bet Saquon over 9, 19, and 29 more yards, getting basically even money, then like 4-1, and then 16-1, how is that line 16-1? Would you book me if I called you and say, hey, it's the 8 minutes to go in the game, the Eagles have a big lead, Saquon's probably going to get a carry or two? Would you give me 16-1 on him getting 30 more yards, even though I lost? That's a bet you take 100 times out of 100 times.
Yeah.
The odds are just wrong. They're flat out wrong. And they don't adjust mid-game. They're just it's a complete mistake. So when you could take advantage of that throughout the game, that's how you win. That's how, hey, you're never going to always win, but you're going to win a lot more than you lose, especially when you're getting 3-1, 5-1, 10-1, and 16-1, which you can hedge in a lot of capacity, in a lot of ways down the road. Just kind of reversing to SGPs. We talked about last week, one of the strategies on SGPs. Every single player, if you look at any player that you would have taken, any main player, Xavier, Worthy, we talked about, Kelsey, Goddard, Smith, Brown, 5 position players, 25 yards, and then you throw in the quarterbacks at 150 to 175 or 175 to 200 and kind of ladder it as you go. You cannot lose. Now, where you did lose is when you started laddering it up. Kelsey, asshole, got 39 yards. He gets 40 yards.
Yeah.
There was one bet I had, $100, paid $4,800 for 1 freaking yard. You can't cry over it. It is what it is. That last touchdown pass to Hopkins, I wish that went to Kelsey. I didn't even care if he scored. I just needed a yard. So when they actually moved backwards on a play, I'm like, okay, good. Now we have a chance to throw him the pass. And he's just like a freaking shell right now. So Kelsey didn't get me that 1 yard. But even like I talked to you before about Saquon, I threw Saquon rushing and receiving as a combination. So he got 40. What did he get receiving? Combined, I think he was like around 90, if I'm not mistaken. Because receiving, he had that one big, he had 40 yards receiving. So he had 97. So if you were playing 70 plus, 80 plus, 90 plus, you won. If you played it just as, and their odds are the same. You throw in the rushing with the receiving, the odds are exactly the same. So we really, really crushed these pregame SGPs. It could have been better. Like I said, if Goddard gets to 40 and Kelsey gets to 40, it's even crazier of a win for this game. Thousands and thousands of dollars on SGPs on $100 bets would have paid out if those guys ended up with 13 and 1 more yard. Pretty much every other bet, and I threw in a lot of the Chief guys to get 1 catch. Juju, 1 catch. Hopkins, 1 catch. Pacheco, 1 catch. Hunt, 1 catch. Gray, 1 catch. They all got 1 catch. I think Juju had 2 catches. So everybody had that 1 catch, which is what they've done the last couple of weeks. The only thing we really needed was Mahomes yards and for these SGPs, and they hit. And then if you continued betting live, and you could do this, write it down somewhere for next year, playoffs, these or standalone games that count, that matter, where a team is keeping their foot on the gas, or a team is behind and they're throwing. And we have this several times this year on standalone games, whether it was Kirk Cousins throwing for 500 yards, Baker Mayfield, the game against the Bucs where him and Lamar, was it him and Lamar? No, it was a Jameis Winston game. So where they combined for like 500 yards passing. You ladder these, and you just, there's games you win, games you lose. But sometimes when you can be disciplined and you start tailing, kind of just like piling on the wins, you will get limited on DraftKings. You will get limited on FanDuel. You will get kicked off Caesars. If you continue to do this and take advantage, they don't want to pay you. They see somebody taking advantage of their mistakes. You will get a note. You will get a pop-up that says your max bet is $64.70. Sorry. Or you will get a note that says you can't play on this account anymore. This account's being closed. And we can talk about that with basketball later. But that is how to live bet throughout a game that pregame you were dead wrong on, and yet still absolutely kill the books. And making the game fun. The game sucked, but man, did I have a good time.
Yeah, it's a great time to win money, at least until you're limited. But
yeah, and then I wanted to go through some of your props. If you want to go through some of the props you won or lost, and then I have a whole list here to throw out, because these props are just. It was so great at the end of this game that I was just laughing. Like every other play was laughter. So do you have any props that stood out to you that you want to touch on?
Well, unfortunately, I had the over 40.5 points for the Eagles, and it looked great for a while, and then they just stopped scoring, which you would expect them to do. Although, as I've said before, I hate spoilers for TV shows and movies, but I don't mind spoilers for sports games, and so the TV broadcast is behind usually or almost always. From what you see online. So if you see the CBS game tracker, it'll be actually like 10 to 15 seconds ahead of the telecast. Sometimes it'll even be like 2 plays ahead. And so you'll know what's going to happen. And so, I saw for a second when the Eagles had 40, suddenly 46 popped up. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then switch back to 40. I'm like, oh man, what happened here? And it was the Chauncey Gardner pick 6 where there was a penalty, and so like I guess they thought there was gonna be a pick six, and then they just reversed it. So that was unfortunate. I did hit a same game parlay in the second, like at halftime, which like I never did before. And I was watching with my dad, and like, I was telling him, yeah, you can bet over 40.5 now. You can bet the Chiefs plus. He actually, unfortunately for him, he also had a bet on the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, and he hedged at Chiefs plus 16.5, which is a much better number than I had at plus 9.5. And unfortunately for him, like me, he lost because the Chiefs lost by 18 instead of 16. So that was unfortunate. But he was saying this like, it's like, I can't believe you have all you can bet this stuff live. I'm like, Dad, you could bet who's going to catch passes on the next drive. So he was laughing at that. But anyway, it is like, I always knew the stuff existed. I just never took advantage of it. And I've you to thank for it. So now, instead of just going through that miserable halftime show, I was looking at like same game parlays and stuff like that. Although I will say my ears were probably bleeding at that point because the music was so bad. But my same game parlay at halftime was Travis Kelce 25 plus receiving yards, which I don't think he had anything at halftime, or maybe he had one catch.
I think he had one catch, maybe.
He had one catch. It was like for 9 yards or something. So like 25 plus yards. Saquon Barkley 50 plus rushing yards, which just barely got there, and then Patrick Mahomes 150 plus passing yards. I think he had like 33 or something at halftime.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I just like Mahomes is going to throw, and I mentioned on the site, or at least I don't know if I mentioned on the site or Twitter. I was like that Chiefs Buccaneers Super Bowl, which was a massacre. Like this one was. Mahomes had like 260 passing yards in that game. Like, he's not going to get nothing in the second half. So I thought that 150 plus was pretty easy. And I thought Barkley would definitely get there 50 plus. And he did, although kind of barely. I thought Travis Kelce was really.
What were your odds on that?
It was minus 155 on that.
And if you laddered that to like Mahomes 175 and Mahomes 200, you would have had plus money on those.
Yeah, but then again, I probably would have laddered Barkley as well.
So for future, look at the running backs, mix and match with running and receiving.
Yes.
Because the odds are very, very similar because he's not projected to get much in the passing game.
Right.
But if he gets that one catch that he breaks the screen 15 yards, it's almost like a bonus.
That's true. In my head, like I was like, he's not going to get much in the passing game because, usually when the team's behind, they're gonna throw dump off passes and stuff. But you're right. I mean, he did get there, just passing wise. So yeah, maybe I'll look at that in the future. But yeah. So I mean, that was something I did at halftime. I didn't do all that much at halftime. Like I said, I did have my son jumping all over me, and my daughter was. I think my daughter went home at that point, but I had. I bet some correct scores. I bet everyone's projected score on this show. So unfortunately, like no one had 40 to 22, but I bet like a 0.1. I bet like $10 on all of those. I had some. My anytime touchdowns hit. I had Jalen Hurts to score the first touchdown at was it plus 650, so that hit. Although you mentioned this before, but Dotson. He almost got there. And I had this ESPN had this weird thing where if you bet the anytime touchdown on a player, then like you were automatically like entered in a sweepstakes to like split like this huge pot of bonus bets. And so what I did was I bet $5 on every viable player, including Dotson. And like when Dotson almost scored, I'm like, oh my God, like I think I'm gonna win a lot of money here. Because like I'm probably the only person who bet Dotson. Like I might be like the only person who saw that because like they didn't restrict it to one player. Like FanDuel had something like that for one player. ESPN Bet didn't have any restrictions. So I'm like, let me just bet $5 on every player and see what happens, just out of curiosity. And so I was like, oh my God, like I think I'm gonna win like 10, 20, 30 grand on this. Unfortunately, it didn't happen.
You split the pot with a million other people.
Yeah, I got $90 out of it, so okay. It wasn't bad. I actually covered my whatever I bet, so it was a wash. Plus, I won with Hurts anyway. I bet 5 on him to score there. So I won with the Hurts first touchdown. I won with the Devontae Smith anytime touchdown. I mentioned that a lot of people don't see Devontae Smith as a touchdown scorer, but he's actually had just as many touchdowns as AJ Brown did the past season. He had 8 touchdowns. So, and plus the Chiefs are weaker to number 2 receivers. So I like Devontae Smith. The only touchdown prop I didn't hit was Travis Kelce. Like you said, it would have been nice if Travis Kelce hit that for both of us. Unfortunately, he didn't do anything. He did get 25 plus in the second half, but still, we talked about this before we started recording. Like Travis Kelce was like just a ghost in that game. Like he wasn't doing anything. There were some plays where he was standing around. You mentioned to me, I didn't see it, but he completely whiffed on a block. I don't know what happened to him exactly. My theory was that he had this grand proposal or grand like scheme to propose to Taylor Swift if they won. And like once he saw that they were going to win, he kind of just gave up. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that might be the case.
He's just old.
Yeah, that's true. We both bet, and I think we mentioned it on the show last week. Teams, will there be a 2-point conversion, and will there be a successful 2-point conversion? I found yes on will there be a 2-point conversion, a plus 110, and yes was plus 232. This is a
plus 260. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually somebody commented last week that, hey, I like the 2-point conversion. And I said, if you like that, throw in the yes to make it. And then when they went for the 2-point conversion, I'm like, all right, we covered that bet.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they missed, I'm like, all right, whatever. You win one, it's plus money, so it's fine. You're going to vig out positive. And then the second one's like, all right, we got this one too. And that's kind of where all these props just started hitting one after another.
Yeah.
And kind of the segue. So I actually want to talk about some of the losers first, because we gave out a bunch on the show last week. One of them was, winning margin of 3. That was a nice plus 450. That was a loss. I had each team over 359.5 yards. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Kansas City wasn't close. Philly got, I think, I want to say it was 351. 345. So I lost Philly by 15 yards on that one. Each team to get over 20.5 first downs. Kansas City wasn't close. Philly, though, 21. So 1 by a half. That was nice. Both teams to kick a 33-plus yard field goal. 1-1. Philly did. Obviously, Kansas City did not. Total yards over 715.5. Lost by 95 yards. There were only 620 yards in the game. So that was a loser. The Mahomes rushing props over 6.5 attempts. He only had 4. And his longest attempt to be over 12.5 yards, he lost that. His longest was 9. But on the flip side, Hurts over 9.5 attempts, won easily. Hurts over 11.5 for his longest rush, won easily. And from a same game parlay perspective, Mahomes got exactly 25 yards. And of course, Hurts, flew over that total. So that was good. One of the bets that I always give out, that I always make, is will the game be tied after 0-0? Obviously, that lost. We talked about the one of the things that I really thought was a good bet, and I got it at plus 140, 4th down conversions over 2.5, 0. That was a shocker. Obviously, game script comes into play, but the initial first one of the game was the pass to AJ. Was it the pass to AJ Brown? Was that a 4th down? That pass to AJ Brown that was called OPI?
No, it was third down.
That was 3rd down?
Mm-hmm. I think it was actually
no. That was a 4th and 2. That was 4th and 2.
Okay, you're right. Yeah,
and that was a catch, and that was called OPI. So right off the bat, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna. That's one. I'm like, I wasn't worried about losing the 2.5. I thought there would be a lot of 4th down conversions, so that was obviously a big loser. But the winners were just, and we gave it out here. Second half more points than first half. Take it every single year. You usually find this like minus 110, minus 15. We talked about the 2-point conversions. Tails never fails. Another year of tails. Every year I'm going to bet a little bit more like a blackjack hand, kind of ladder it up. At this point, we're playing with profits, so we're gonna find the minus 101. I actually saw somewhere after I bet it at minus 101. I see tails plus 110. That's amazing. I would have put thousands of dollars on that because I would have hedged it at minus 101 elsewhere.
Well, it was plus 100 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I did see the plus 100, but I can't bet more than like $45 on DraftKings.
Yeah.
So I didn't bet it on DraftKings. So that was a winner. A bet that I give out every single year. I take this every year. I've won it the last 2 years. Over 2.5 players with a pass attempt. I got this at
the
plus
end.
200.
Right
And I
there.
won it with Kenny Pickett throwing a pass on 4th and 6. You don't expect to win that one. I'll take it at the end of the day. Plus 200 is nice. Both teams to score over 19.5 points. Won it on the last touchdown.
Yeah.
I had graded at a loss like 20 minutes earlier, and that was a winner. Over 7.5 players with a rush attempt. This was graded at a loss until Kenny Pickett took a knee, went to 8. So over
Wow.
7.5 hits.
Right at the buzzer.
Right at the buzzer. What else was at the buzzer? Right before the buzzer, over 465.5 passing yards. There were 478 passing yards. Nice 50-yard bomb from Mahomes. First kickoff is always a touchback. I love that one. Usually the adrenaline, they kick the ball right out of the end zone. You got to lay some juice on there. Eagles with a larger time of possession was a good one. Shortest touchdown under 1.5 yards is something that a lot of people took and gave out. Here's a special that I gave you, and I gave this to you months ago. And you should do this every single standalone game because you usually can't lose. You sometimes will middle, and you often could play with equity. You take the first half under. And in this game, you could have taken the first half under 24. So I took under 24 and a little bit over 23.5, but a lot more under 24. Why? And I texted you right before the game, don't forget to bet under 24. And in a few minutes, you'll bet over. You'll get it back. Under 24. Within a few minutes, that line is 22.5. I waited. I didn't text you at this time, but you know how to do this. I bet over 19.5 first half points, and I had under 24. Obviously hoping for some level of middle. It's not bad when you get to exactly 24. You go 1-0-1.
Yeah.
So that is an automatic bet that I make almost, if I remember, almost every single standalone game. I will take the under for the half, and then within 6 to 8 minutes, I will bet the over. And in this game, like clockwork, get the fumble before or the pick right before halftime. Eagles touchdown goes over 19.5, and I'd rather go 1-0-1 than 0-1-1 or 1.
Do you want to explain why that works?
Why does that work? Because the algorithm, once again, is flawed. The algorithm is set to run the total by the minute. So there's 30 minutes and a half, and every minute that goes by without a point, without a score, the total will drop. Except the first quarter is usually lined, let's say 10, second quarter 14, or some variation, 9.5, 13.5. So generally you're getting a total that's 23.5. Understanding why the second quarter is more than the first quarter. I said second half, I meant second quarter. So why is the second quarter lined higher than the first quarter? Well, obviously because the first quarter will carry on, and the end of the second quarter you have halftime. So teams are looking to score before that bell, call it. But the algorithm is not set for that. The algorithm is set per minute. So if that first drive takes 6 minutes or 7 minutes, and even if there's a touchdown in that drive, the line is still dropping. If there is no score, it drops even more. If there's a field goal or a punt, it drops even more. That total was down to 19.5 by middle of the first quarter, which is when I texted you, over 19.5, let's go. And it works unless there's a score in the first 3 minutes of a game. Unless Saquon breaks the first carry for 60 yards, 70 yards like he did 2 weeks ago, you can't lose that bet. It's just a matter of when you want to hedge it back. And do you want to hedge it back for double? Maybe I like the over in a game, and I want to hedge it back double. So now I have equity protecting my under 24, and I'm going to go double on the over 19.5 or 20.5, whatever you want. Or maybe I don't like it that much, but again, it's a bet. You want to cover your risk. You want to mitigate your risk. So now instead of being completely naked on the under 24, I'm going to hedge back 50% or 60% over 19.5 and just cover most of my bet in case I lose, in case there's a crazy flurry of points. Usually you middle it, or maybe not usually, but often you middle it. So why not? If you know going into a game, under 24, you're going to be able to hedge back and get real middle, right? 20.5, 19.5, 16.5. Wouldn't you go into that game every single time, especially when it's even money, right? Or maybe even minus 10. You don't want to do it at minus 130. But if you can get a real good number at 24 or even 23.5 under, knowing that a few minutes into the game, it's going to be 20.5, and you could take the over back, and at worst, you'll vig out and lose your $10 or $20, whatever your vig is, or go a little heavier or a little lighter, either way. So maybe be a little bit heavier to one side, depending on what you like in that particular moment. Or maybe pregame you like something, and you want to just continue shading it or hedging it, take the under, and a few minutes later bet the over. Every single standalone game works exactly the same way. The algorithm is set per minute, not by quarter. So that's how you take advantage of the live. And my favorite bet of all, and I said before the game, some people said to me, like, who do you like in the game? I said, yeah, I like the Chiefs. I said, I don't really care. The only thing I really care about, before we get to my favorite bet, I do this one every year also. You find different sports books and you find the best odds for each team to get a defensive or special teams score. And I had the Eagles at plus, I think this was plus 650. Eagles were at plus 650, and I had the Chiefs at plus 750. And then I parlay them and get like 50 to 1. Then you can cover with like a minus 230, minus 240, no defensive score. So you can't lose. The worst that you can do, depending on how much money you're risking and laying out, is I went into this bet with a minimum win of 160, a maximum win of 8,000. Instead of all that, I ended up winning 700 on the Eagles. Sorry, 2,700 on the Eagles.
Nice.
And I was with people, and I'm rooting for the Chiefs. And as soon as that pick happens, I'm now rooting for the touchdown on the pick six, because at that point I can't lose on the game. I'm so hedged out across the board that's going to really kind of change the early part of the game. Once again, FanDuel, thank you very much for giving me plus 650 and plus 750. Best numbers that were out there. I think DraftKings had like 5 to 1. So find the best numbers. Otherwise, the math might not add up. So we hit the defensive score also. But like I said, my favorite bet of the night, and people said to me, who do you like? What are you rooting for? I said, I really need the MVP to thank God first. And I gave it out last week, and I said I got it at plus 150 2 weeks ago when it came out. After the awards ceremony, after like every single player thanked God first, I got a bit more on this. I bet it at minus 190, maxed out 3 accounts minus 190, and then the line was minus 250 by kickoff. I was already maxed on a few places, and I didn't want to I had a lot of money in exposure on will the MVP thank God first. And my premise was Mahomes, Barkley, and Hurts, all three of those guys, and many others, very likely would have thanked God first. And after the game, they were interviewing Hurts before the MVP was announced, and he thanked God first. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to count because this is not the podium.
Right.
And I'm like really stressing watching this podium, watching them give him the announce and watching them give him the MVP trophy. And the first thing he says is, God is good. And I'm thinking, awesome. And actually, one of the books graded my bet a loss. I'm thinking, what the hell is this? And then they fixed it and they graded it a win. So I gave it out last week on the show. We mentioned it 2 weeks ago on the show as well. And I know people think it's stupid, but I handicapped this. And I watch all these players, and every single time they're interviewed, almost every single one of those guys says, I want to thank my Lord and Savior. Without him, we're nobody, blah, 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 whatever. They're always thanking God. And so I took my chances. And I was worried about it because that's, you can't really predict what's going through a guy's head in that moment. But I had big exposure on that. That's a gamble. But I thought I had a good premise, and I thought I had great odds. So it was just a terrible, terrible game. But once it became such a bad game, we just started loading up on these props, loading up on the SGPs, the live. And like I said, some of these props that hit late, the first downs for the Eagles, the over 2.5 players with a pass attempt, the both teams to get 19.5 points, the garbage yards from Mahomes late. The only thing that could have made this game like infinitely better in those moments was Kelsey getting one more freaking yard. And that would have added like another $8,000 to my pie. But it was a very profitable game, a really shitty game, an overall unbelievable season. And with that, I have nothing left with 2024-25 season. I'm out.
Yeah, it's saying good thing that for Evan that Trump has deployed IRS agents to the border, so they aren't listening. If they're at the border listening, like, oh man, we would have gotten Evan for this. No, we can't. Hopefully this is just the beginning of the end for the IRS. It'd be great. Is God is good technically thanking him? I actually had that in mind because I knew you bet it, and as soon as I heard that, I'm like, yeah, that should count, right? Yeah.
It counted, yeah. And like I said, it was graded a loss on one of the accounts first. I'm like, why is this a loss right now? Like something's wrong in my accounting. And then I look through the history and I see a loss there, and I'm thinking like, are you serious? But then like an hour later, it was graded a win and allowed me not to have to make phone calls and say like, but he said God is good. That should count. No, it counts. It counts.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I guess the only way you would have lost that is if Travis Kelce won MVP and he would have thanked Taylor Swift. But that's that did not happen. I mean, he was probably.
But if he won the MVP, he probably would have had 40 plus yards. So
that's true. There you go. Yeah, Saquon Barkley was the guy who killed me. You mentioned Kelce. Saquon Barkley ruined things for me. I had a lot of stuff with Barkley with 70 plus rushing yards. I can't believe he didn't get the 70 rushing yards. I know the Chiefs loaded the box and everything like that, but I thought, I don't know. I thought he'd break one long run.
I can't believe he didn't get to 80.
Yeah.
I thought in the fourth quarter he would for sure have 20, 30 yards.
Yeah. Seriously, I thought he'd break one long run at least, and it just didn't happen. Like, he had his worst game of the year. It didn't matter. I mean, the Eagles won.
Like I said, I wouldn't count it as the worst game of the year. They literally had 8 guys in the box.
It's okay. It was the worst stat line of the year.
Yeah.
Let's just say that. I wanted to ask you this, and this will tie into our last topic. You mentioned the two things on the standalone games. You mentioned betting the under in the first half, and then hedging/middling toward the over, and also betting the defensive touchdowns, and conjoining that with the no touchdowns. Would you do that for every standalone game, or like would you be selective?
Well, no, because they don't have the props are not up. You don't have a good enough line on the no.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Too expensive. They used to be so much better. Now it's like really tight. The margins are really, really tight. And it took me a very long time to find the exact number that made sense and then how I wanted to scale it. Because you have to lay out a significant amount of money. And then I'm trying to figure out the exact dollar on the Eagles versus the Chiefs, because the Chiefs were 7.5 to 1. On a regular game, you're probably not going to get there. And also it draws attention because on one account, I'm literally going in onto like a menu called Prop Builder. And the limit there for me is $200 per bet. So I got to take the bet like 12 times just to hedge out. And it just raises red flag. And I don't want to deal with that. So, and the likelihood is that you're going to win like a couple $100 at best. Now, obviously, there's a no risk to win thousands if both teams get the defensive score, but it's not worth getting shut down in week 4 on that type of action. And like I said, it's too hard to find it. It takes, I hate to say it because, I'm kind of like a nerd with this, but it takes a while to really figure out the exact number and what you need and where you're shopping. I mean, I was looking for this every single day for, going into various accounts, like writing down exactly what the number was. Like, nope, not good enough. Not good enough. I made calls like, hey, can you find me a no defensive score for like minus 270 somewhere? Like, no, I have minus 410. Like, no good. Minus 360, not good enough. Minus 320, we're still off. Like, I need minus 270 on this bet. If I don't get minus 270, I can't bet it. And they're like, why do you need minus 270? I'm like, I don't know. Just trust me. I need minus 270. And without finding the exact number, it's just not worth it. Like, I couldn't do this year my field bet. For the last few years, I've taken advantage of betting the exact score being the field, hedged by neither team to score 40 points.
Yeah, they took that away.
If the team scores 40 points, you win the field. Except this year, for the first time, there were 702, yes, I counted, 702 possible scores on one of the accounts. And 40 to 22 was a listed score, so you would have lost. But in years past, 40 to 22 wasn't even close to a listed score. As a matter of fact, there was no score this year of 12. So did they have 12? No, when they had 6 and they got the touchdown, they ended up getting the 2 there. So they ended up with 14. But if they got to 12, the losing team jumped from 10 to 13. There was no score out of 702 score options that listed the losing team with 12 points. Mm-hmm. But the field option was only plus 240, which is an absolute joke. If you told me it was 20 to 1, I would have bet it and I would have lost. But at 20 to 1, I would have hedged neither team to score 40, like minus 600, except 40 was a listed score. So it didn't work. It just didn't work this year. And, the books are getting a little bit smarter. because this is how I killed them 2 years ago and 3 years ago, is by hedging out the exact score with neither team to score 40 points. And you can't lose when you can either score 40 and win or don't score 40 and potentially win. So this year it was just too many numbers, and the books got a little smarter as far as the exact score. But yeah, I mean, it takes time. You're looking through huge menus of hundreds and hundreds of different props and making sure you're getting the right number and the right odds. And it takes time. Like, this is not, if you really want to have fun watching this game and you don't bet normally, you're not going to sit for what you and I probably sat for hours upon hours scouring markets. I have, more than 10 accounts in various places. You're looking at a lot of different windows, and it's hard to do that. And it's very tedious and it's not fun. But when you're betting on the game and you're kind of trying to hedge yourself into potential profits without risk, a little bit at a time, for me, it's worth it. And frankly, I love looking at this anyway. We can talk and look at this all day. But sometimes I wouldn't recommend doing this for like a Sunday night football game. This is too much to do during the week, unless you had hours upon hours to look at what games.
Well, what about the first half under then?
First half number every Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night, without thinking. Just bet the under. First half under at kickoff, 5 minutes before kickoff, because the lines go up because people bet the over. So as close, sit down, put the game on, first half under, write it down. 5 minutes later, bet the over or wait. If you do it every game for every standalone game, you will win money. You will. You cannot lose.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I did that a few times. With your recommendation this year, and it worked out. I definitely made money on it.
Until the algorithm changes, you have positive EV.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, what other we won't be able to do that until September, unfortunately. What other ways can you make money? You're doing this sort of thing on sports books, with basketball's coming up. Well, NBA's going now. You have NCAA tournaments in about a month. And I don't know if you, I doubt you do anything for baseball, but what do you do?
I don't do anything baseball wise. I mean, I work with a group, so for baseball, if I'm interested and in the mood, I'll tail some guys. But for the most part, my off season in the summer, I won't really look much. I'm up in the mountains near you in Pennsylvania in the summertime and not really looking at sports books much at all. So as far as basketball, I stopped doing the NBA because the players don't care. They frankly don't care. Even in the playoffs, they don't care. And I told you about this last week. We talk about player props. There's different strategies, and we could talk closer to the playoffs about certain strategies that I have going into the playoffs that are very, very good. But with college basketball, these kids care. You watch these games, and there's momentum shifts. And what I do with college basketball, without even knowing the players or the systems anymore, I enjoy college basketball a lot more. Obviously, the players aren't as good, but the games are more competitive. When you have a competitive game, you have a top two teams in a conference, or top few teams, not the top two teams. They care every night. And if team goes up by 7, 8, 10, 12 points, and there's a timeout, I like to bet the team that's behind and let them come back or make a run. And then I hedge the other way and move on. And as long as there are runs in the game, in any basketball game, usually there's an ebb and flow to a game. And you can take advantage at any point in the game, whether it's later in the game, early in the game, as the line moves, especially in a pick'em game where the team is going up and down. One team is ahead, there's a timeout, there's a comeback. There's not always a comeback. Sometimes, you're not at the right time. Don't chase it, right? But when you get into conference tournament play, or even just conference play like we're seeing now, and you get games that are good games, and you see a team that's behind, or you see a favored team that's behind, bet them to come back. And they don't have to win. All they have to do is come back, is make the game more exciting, and the odds will move in your favor. Never cash out, because they're trying to cash you out, and they're not offering you the correct number. Just bet the other side. And as you do this with smaller amounts of money, with $10, $15, $20, at some point you realize, hey, this really works. I'm going to bet $20 or $30 or $50 on a team that's like plus 600 or plus 500 because they're down 12 with 10 minutes to go. No, they don't have to win. But if they come back and make it close, and now you're plus 400 now on the other side is minus 150, lay minus 150, lay minus 200. You have plus 400 minus 200. You can't lose, right? It's a spread. It's an arbitrage type of situation where I joke around and say, hey, they're now paying me to watch this game,
Right.
and you can continue doing that. So, and you can do that when there's so many games on that count. The conference tournament week is a huge week in early March where you'll get like 60 games in a day, literally, that all count, that all matter, where the kids all care. And if you put 3 or 4 of those games on at a time and you're following a couple of games, it's bound to happen where teams are behind and they come back. Oftentimes they come back and win, but you don't care if they win. You just want to make a run. Hedge the run, move on to the next game. You will win more than 75, 80% of the games that you play. You will not always win. So you don't want to chase. You don't want to keep betting a team that sucks, that's playing poorly. You want to watch the game, follow the odds, look at the odds screen, watch for a team that's behind. Maybe they're cold. They can't make a shot. Another team is hot. They can't miss. It always regresses. Doesn't always. It often regresses. And momentum, especially in college basketball, is huge. A lot of these teams, it's like, do these teams know how to break a press? Can they make a free throw? A lot of times with the pressure on, they can't make free throws. They can't break pressure. And teams come back. And like I said, you don't care if the team that you bet wins. You just need them to make a run. Be ready to hedge the other way. Win a little bit at a time. Don't get greedy. Don't get crazy. But you will win a lot more than you lose. And the games become a lot more fun that way. I enjoy betting the games that way because, I coach basketball. I coach middle and high school basketball. And, I turned last week, my team blew a game, and I had a player who fouled out. And I turned to my son who was watching the game. I said, if there was a live market, I'd bet the other team right now, plus whatever. And he's laughing. And I've done the same thing when my teams are behind. Like, we know we're going to call timeout. I tell my team, hey, we're just fine. You relax. Everybody calm down. We're going to make a run back right now. We're going to change something up. We're going to do something different. And that's the way basketball is played. There's an ebb and flow to a game that you can take advantage of as in the live markets. It's harder to do that in football. But in basketball, there's always runs. This team's on an 8-0 run or 6-2 run or 12-2 run. And like I said, you don't need the team to win. You just need them to make a run. But I think we should probably talk more about that and some other NBA stuff as the playoffs get rolling. But this is more college basketball because like you can't do this in the NBA. They don't care. Most games are blowouts. If I open up right now and look at the NBA numbers for tonight, and I have no idea what the scores are tonight.
Well, before you look, did you see the Bulls Pistons score?
I just saw it right now. I see it's a 40-point blowout. You think the Bulls care about that game? They didn't care.
It was at halftime. It was 71-29.
Exactly. And they didn't care. Right.
Unbelievable. Although I will say, the Suns, I bet them tonight. They didn't cover, but they were down, I think, 18. They brought it back down to 4. Unfortunately, we had +4. They lost by 7. Although we did get the Kevin Durant over points, which that was our player prop.
So these are things that I wouldn't even consider betting.
We've done very well with them. I think we're 22-11 in the past 16 days or something.
Nothing wrong with 66%, but I'm not betting anything unless it's 80+%.
And so you're saying that this college basketball stuff, it hits 80% of the time.
Well over 80% of the time. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. When you watch these close games, they're constantly making runs. Constantly. Look at Purdue, Michigan tonight. Back and forth. One team's ahead. I was like not even really paying attention, just on the TV because my son's watching Michigan. And it's like, oh, I wish I bet Michigan when they were behind by 8. Now they're ahead. I'm like, oh, all right, I guess I missed the window. And I was eating dinner. I wasn't really paying attention. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really watching to pay attention tonight to college basketball. But, when you get into conference play and these teams want to win every game, there are runs all night long. And I generally stick to it when it's, as we get more into where there's like 20 games in a day, not like 3 games a night that I'm watching. Because otherwise you try forcing it. But if you're watching like 10 games at once, or if there's 10 games on at once on like a Saturday night or in conference play, like I said, when you get that Thursday, Friday, and there's like 60 games on in a day, you know how many of those games you can win money on? Yeah. I mean, shame if you're sitting there with a computer screen for 12 hours, you should be making a couple $100 an hour. Because there's always games that have, Kentucky's down by 9, or Kentucky's down by 15, or Alabama's down by 15 right now, or 12. It's the first 6 minutes of the game. Are they not going to come back in the game? I'll take a bet on Alabama plus 250 when they were a pick 'em for the game or minus 150 for the game. And as soon as they make a run and come back, I'm going to hedge it and go to the next game.
Yeah.
And you're going to win a lot of those games. Now you're not flipping coins before the game starts.
Would you only do this during conference tournaments and NCAA tournament, or like right now?
I would do it. I would do it now. If I were sitting and watching a games, like really, you have to focus. You have to pay attention. You can't just like nonchalantly be watching the games. Because if you're not paying attention, you're not following the odds. You don't see where the odds are or moving. You got to pay attention, like anything else. If you're not, you can't just foolproof. Just somebody said to me, "Hey, NBA, can I just bet the team that's down at the end of the first quarter?" I'm like, "Well, not really. You can't just bet the team that's down in the first quarter because most of these teams don't give a shit. They don't care." Denver last year in the playoffs lost the game by 30 points.
Yep.
You're telling me like they cared in that game? They were heading the series. They didn't care in that game.
Yeah, it's wild that it's the playoffs. It's not some game in January,
And they still didn't care because they were up 1-0 or 2-1 in the playoff series.
It's mind-boggling.
Don't care.
It's mind-boggling. These players make so much money, and they can't like get up for a basketball game. What really bothers me is like the injury or the health management or whatever you want to call it. When players will sit out for games, and it always like just mystified me because I can't. Well, it's a different time now because I have 2 kids, but before I had kids. I would play basketball all the time with my friends, like almost like in my 20s, like when I lived by myself and I didn't have a girlfriend. My friends and I would just play basketball 4, 5, 6 days a week, like at the gym or the playground. And like these guys can't play basketball. I know they go harder and stuff like that because it's a real game in the NBA. But like it's the stuff that I used to do for fun, like 4 or 5 times a week, and like these guys can't play 2 games in a row or something.
Because these guys get paid $30 million a year.
Yeah,
they get paid $30 million a year and they sit out. Joel Embiid doesn't play half the time.
Embiid's such a bum.
He doesn't play, but a lot of guys don't play.
Yeah,
I
think Embiid's the worst. Embiid's the worst of them, but
LeBron is the oldest player in the league. He plays every game.
Yeah,
almost every game.
Yeah,
I
think he sat out like once.
Most games. Most of the players just don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not betting. If I have to handicap whether or not you care, forget it.
That's all I do. By the way, that's all I do in the NBA. I feel I have a good beat on it. Just like whether teams.
If you're following it religiously,
if
you're following these teams around the clock, and you have an idea who cares and who doesn't, take advantage. Yeah. But I'm not gonna devote my time now. Even with football season ending, with other things going on. I just can't. If I can't devote the proper time to following it on a daily basis, I'm not going to bet it. As I now start watching more college basketball and getting more into college basketball and getting a better flavor of who's good, what kind of pace do these teams play. There's other things to do as well. We talked about last week's show, betting the overs late in games. The games that have 7 to 12 point leads, I'm going to bet the over every single time. I don't care what the total is. I know that I'm betting the over in the 5 minutes to go in a game. That's a 7 to 12 point game in a competitive game because I'm going to get the free throws or I might get overtime. And I just do it every single time. I don't think about it. This is the number. It's 5 minutes to go. There's a timeout. It's 7 to 12 point lead. I will bet the over. I will bet the live over. I will not bet the live over before that. And I will take advantage. And then you can keep betting that as they continue to score points and continue to foul. You will continue to win money. I mentioned before something said about taking kids to gambling, and I'm sitting at the Iowa LSU, and I'm sitting 8 rows behind the LSU bench, and I'm listening to Kim Mulkey. I'm watching her yell at her players in the huddle to foul. What do you think I'm doing at that particular moment? I'm live betting Iowa team total over.
Yep.
Period. I don't care what happens. I just want to take my girls down at the end of the game and take a picture near Caitlin Clark. But before I'm going down and taking a picture 5 feet away from Caitlin Clark, I'm live betting Iowa team totals over because I hear the LSU coach telling her players at the end of the game where they're down by 6 to 10 or whatever points they were down. So we're playing till the end. Foul. And I'm like, over. And that's not 60%. Caitlin Clark is an 80% free throw shooter, so my winning those bets was an 80% bet every time I bet it.
That's awesome. Does it apply to WNBA? As Slew was asking here.
I don't
That's just a joke.
know. I did watch the end of the Liberty against the Vegas Aces game, and I think there were some crazy calls at the end of that game, if I remember correctly. But I don't follow the totals, nor do I know how good these players are. All I knew was that Caitlin Clark's pretty damn good. I watched her shoot around before the game. She's unbelievable. And I know she makes free throws, and I knew she was getting the ball, and I knew she was getting fouled. And if I called you at that moment, we froze time and said, "Hey, Walt, I'm here in Albany, and I'm watching Caitlin Clark's about to get fouled, uh, and she's about to go to the line, and the team total for Iowa is like another 3.5 points, but she's going to the line in the next like 30 seconds. You want that over?" It's like, yeah, book me for a couple bucks on that bet.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah,
exactly.
hey, Evan, how do you know they're going to foul her? Yeah, the coach just told the team to foul. I'm sitting 8 rows back.
That's the best inside info. Just,
yeah.
Seeing stuff live like that, yeah, it's definitely.
Oh, and by the way, I'm betting it before, like you said before, the TV's ahead, the
Right.
TV's behind. I'm like right there. The algorithm's pretty quick, but they don't hear the huddle.
Yeah. You're ahead of everything. You're ahead of online stuff too.
You don't need to be a professional to understand logic. And
yeah.
The crazy thing is I had to borrow my 12-year-old daughter's phone because I was using 2 accounts. Can I borrow your phone for a minute? It's like, why? Don't look at my phone. Like, no, I need your phone. 2 seconds.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Do we have anything else to touch on?
I wouldn't bet NFL futures until the schedule comes out. And I know I'm going to be listening to you and to Charlie about the draft in a couple of weeks.
Can't wait.
I like to take a pause from the football season. It's good to kind of unwind. What I will do at some point, probably after the draft, as we get back into free agency and draft analysis, is, and Andy might say this too, because I've talked to Andy about this. If you talk to Andy on a future show, it's kind of going back throughout the season and looking at who you picked for contest picks. Were there mistakes that we made, overreactions that were made, and just kind of ways to handicap yourself. And I've said this before. I know the games that I get wrong. Like, I know I'm betting dogs more than favorites. I know I'm betting those 3.5 to 6.5 point dogs kind of weekly. And from a contest perspective this year, I was very bad. I was actually in the super contest 44, 44, and 2. And in regular picks overall, 134, 132, and 5. That's not a typical season. Normally I like to be somewhere around 54, 53, 54, 55%. And from a contest perspective, if you're not 60%, you got no shot. So you really want to be in that 60% range. I was well behind that pace. Mm-hmm. And you want to go back and start kind of going through your own logic. And that's why I take notes on my picks and look at where the lines are and why did I think the way I thought at that moment? Where was I wrong? Where can we make changes? And obviously we know that these games, a lot of times anything can happen. Although in this Super Bowl, 95-5 would be Philly. But there are things that we take notes on. And then in a couple months, a lot of times we'll forget a lot of this. And that's why it's important for me, at least, to go back in time and understand, I don't care about trends often. We've talked about that with respect to Ravens, Steelers. And one thing I'll tell you next year that I wrote down now already is that Lamar versus the Steelers in Baltimore is 2-0. Nope. Right. So we could talk about trends. Oh, these games are always close. Well, not really. Lamar at home is not close. Lamar at home against the Steelers is a dominating quarterback. It's only 2 data points. So is it really a reason to pick them? No, but it's certainly not going to be a reason why we talk about, hey, I like the Steelers in this game +7 because these games are always close. But I'm going to have written down here in my notes that, no, they're not, especially not in Baltimore. They're not always close. It's got to handicap this game. And you know what else I'm going to remember? I'm not just going to pick the Chiefs because they have Mahomes in a close game. There are other factors that we can think about that are, more big picture football related, and not just say, well, I like Mahomes because he always wins. Well, 60% he wins, but it's not a reason to only pick Mahomes in a close game, especially in the regular season when they don't care. And so I like to go back at some point, handicap the handicap, figure out what we can do better. But really now for the next few weeks, totally unwind from football, focus on other things, learn covered calls at some point, and get ready for college basketball, because I think there's a lot of untapped potential in the live markets on college basketball. And come April, I'll learn the NBA right before the playoffs start. Like, I don't care what's going on in the NBA. I find it funny now that Luka is on the Lakers, and Anthony Davis is now hurt.
Yeah,
So
first game he got hurt.
I find that hilarious. I don't know how that trade. I think back in the day, the Lakers, like, who was it? Was it Silver or was it Stern that canceled the Chris Paul trade to the Lakers? I think, was that a Stern?
I think it was Stern. I think it was Stern. Yeah,
Something's going on that they were able to trade for Luka. I mean, I'm not a huge Luka fan, but that's insane.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. They almost got Mark Williams too. They canceled.
If that's in your fantasy football league, that's like there's collusion going on.
Of course,
that trade's got to get vetoed.
Yeah, 100%. That's
I'll
wild.
learn the NBA in a couple of weeks. I really don't care. I'm not going to waste my time now following the NBA. I'd rather watch college basketball than the NBA and watch teams like the Bulls that lose by 40 in an NBA game. No thanks. Give me the college game. Kentucky. The SEC has like 5 of the top 8 teams. Like, that's the conference I want to watch.
Yeah,
I want to watch SEC. I want to watch Big Ten. I want to watch Big 12 basketball, and then get ready for the conference play. We got a month. We're a month away from having 50, 60 games a day for like 2 weeks. That's where I think there's money to be made. I'm following Walt and Charlie Campbell draft picks.
Yeah, we'll have Charlie on sometime soon. So looking forward to that. You mentioned not tying up money in NFL futures. Mostly I agree, but I think there are some exceptions real quick. And I will say this about the Redskins. They're 23-1 now on FanDuel. If they trade for Myles Garrett, I think they are the favorite to trade for him. That 23-1 is going to be long gone. So I think there are some exceptions to that rule. I think the Niners or the Redskins are a team that I would bet right now if you want to. But yeah, I agree. Like, you don't want to tie up money right now because especially because free agency hasn't happened yet. So I was just taking some long shots here real fast. I took Redskins 20-1. I also did a 23-1 here. 49ers 17-1 instead of like that. Vikings 40-1. Every most books have like 25-1 or 30-1. I saw 40-1 DraftKings. I think I had to.
The only reason why you would take these now is because you feel like you're going to take these eventually anyway, and you're getting the best of the number today.
Exactly. I think if Vikings, like I said, I think they have like 7th or 8th most cap space. They could do a lot here and improve their team, and I think that people might catch on to how good they are. I also bet the Chiefs at 7-1. I was able to boost this. I'm listing 7-1 here. I had some bonus bets that were going to expire, so I put it on the Chiefs. Not bonus bets. Sorry, a profit boost. I put it on the Chiefs. I got up to 9-1. And I figure I'm going to bet them, like you said, I'm going to bet them anyway. I
actually had a bonus bet, but it was for the NBA for some reason. It was only NBA.
Yeah.
And I used it on the Nuggets at 14-1 to win the West.
Wow, 14-1 to win the West.
Hold on. That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it seems like a great number.
I'll tell you what it was because I was looking at the Nuggets or the Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
And
Nuggets to win the championship are 14-1 right now.
Okay, so maybe it was the championship, but I think I may have changed it and took the conference. Yeah, I did the conference at 6-1 instead of the finals at 14-1. I put a bonus bet on Denver to win the West at 6-1.
Okay,
but that was just with a bonus, and it was only NBA, so I couldn't look at the football anyway. Mm-hmm. And I was between looking at OKC and Denver, and I figured, Denver 6-1. Okay. In hindsight, maybe I would have rather taken that and put it on the Lakers because this was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm kicking myself now. I was looking at the Lakers at 20 or 22-1. I think it was even last night, and I was like, they're not playing today. I'll just bet it today. I don't know why I waited. I think I was just tired. And now all I see are 17-1 right now. So that's kind of tilting. I like the Lakers with Doncic and Austin Reeves is coming on. There's still LeBron. I would have liked them more with Mark Williams. That trade was canceled because someone didn't pass the physical. Like getting a good big man like Mark Williams, I think would have made a big difference. Not that he's like a superstar, but he's a pretty good player. I do. The Nuggets at 14-1 are kind of interesting. I'm sure we'll go over this in the future, but
What
they
about
are. They're
what
third.
about the Sixers? Philly, Titletown, USA.
Sixers. If
Sixers are 85-1.
they need to be like 585-1 for me to even consider like a dollar. I don't know. This team sucks. Embiid is done. Like I mean, he's still like a good player, but he's not like the elite center he used to be. He's washed up. Like he can't. He's washed up from what he used to be. At least I should say. He can't stay healthy. He always gets hurt. He misses games. They're not even in the playoffs right now. If they were to start right now. The Nuggets are interesting because they're third in the West. I feel like people are just writing them off. Like they still have Jokic. Like they can definitely win. I think 14-1 in Denver. I think is the best value that I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was the best value. Also, Denver, and took them for the conference instead. So
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. All right. I mean, we'll go over this more as the basketball season progresses and whatnot. So, all right. Thanks guys for watching and commenting. Really appreciate it. Thanks especially to the boss for this amazing super chat, $49.99. I really appreciate it.
record.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. It means a lot. I'm glad you were able to win the 15K. That's awesome. So we'll be back tomorrow with Kenny. I think we're going to get into some fantasy football for 2025. So yeah, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. All that would be appreciated. Evan, any final thoughts before we head out?
No, but like I said last week, thank you to you and to the listeners and to the watchers. The DMs that I've gotten, both good and bad, are fun. All are welcome. But this was awesome, and really appreciated you bringing me on to talk some football. Hopefully, we can get back to it next year, win some money for everybody, and maybe one or two basketball strategy shows would be welcome as well. And looking forward to that. But otherwise, signing off, and we'll talk hopefully to everybody soon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you on as my co-host on Tuesdays. I said this last week. Jacob had to step down. He's working for USA Today now, and they don't let people on other shows. So I was like, man, who am I going to find? And Eitan Shander from Odd Shopper was like, he's able to come in for a couple of weeks. I asked him, he's a friend of mine, so I said like until I find someone permanent. And then we talked. I'm like, oh yeah, Evan was great last year. Let me hopefully he can come on. And yeah, it's been amazing. So I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's been great. All right, guys. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you for watching, commenting. We'll be back tomorrow, like I said, and have a great night. I'll talk to you then.